Not Mayor Gray. She is out tonight, and Mayor Pro Tem Jason Joyner is out tonight, so I'm going to kind of get us started off here tonight. We do need, first order of business, to appoint a chair for the meeting. If I can get a nomination.
Well, it's awkward since you're asking for it, but I will nominate you, Commissioner Lutz.
I'll accept the nomination. Any other? Nope. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now that we have that awkwardness out of the way, let's move along. First item on the agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance. We have Jahan Carpenter here with us tonight. Jahan, if you want to come on up. And I'm just going to read a little nice excerpt about this young man. We are very proud of Carver Cub Jahan Carpenter, who is in 5th grade this year. Miss Barrett, his CCR teacher, wanted him to be recognized tonight because she has had the pleasure of watching him grow over the years and gaining the skills necessary to be a successful student. Jahan has made so much progress while at Carver Elementary and is already exceeding expectations this school year. Ms. Barrett is honored to be one of the teachers who was able to help Jahan tap into his true potential. Jahan is having some awesome breakthroughs, and we are so excited about his future. So Jahan, those are some great words from your teachers and principals today, so thank you so much for being here with us. And if we want to rise, we'll let him lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an invocation. We have Errol Briggerman from the Wendell Council of Churches.
Good evening. Could I make a couple announcements before we pray?
Go right ahead.
Okay, as we do every year on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, it's called a Thanksgiving Sing. And this year it's at Pleasant Grove Baptist, Isabel's Church. I think we have 6 groups at this point will come and sing that Sunday evening. It starts at 7 o'clock. It's really a great time, a fellowship and worship. And we have one group they've been coming. They're from Wendell First Baptist, and it's called Voices of Truth. It's an awesome group. Several of you have heard him sing. Anyhow, if you'd all like to come, it's open to the public, and it's a great time of fellowship and a little bit of refreshments afterwards. Okay? That's what's going on kind of towards the end of the year now. So let's pray. Lord, we just thank you for this wonderful day you've given us. We thank you, Lord, how you watch over us, how you protect us, how you challenge us, Lord, to serve you, to honor you, to praise you. We just ask you, Lord, this evening, as our councilmen have many issues to be brought to their attention, be brought to our city, we just ask you, Lord, that you give them the wisdom, give them the understanding, and give everybody here the understanding of all the outcomes of this. We just know, Lord, that this evening will honor you. We just praise you. We for all these things, Lord, we ask in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving to our public comment period. Again, we have some people signed up for that tonight. Just a reminder for those coming to speak, please include your full name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak your mind. If you see the light turning yellow, that means it's time to wrap it up. And when it's red, it means it's time to stop. First on the item tonight is Roger Peterson.
Thank you. Mr. Acting Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Roger Peterson. I live at 4490 Wendell Boulevard in Wendell. I'm also the Executive Director of the Wendell Chamber of Commerce, and it's in those shoes that I stand here before you tonight. I first want to start by personally thanking all of you for your support of and participation in the 94th Annual Harvest Festival. on November 5th. I think you'll agree with me, it was a wonderful day to be in Wendell and to be from Wendell. But I'm primarily here to thank the town staff at all levels for all of their support in planning and execution of the Harvest Festival. The police department, public works department were intimately involved in a lot of the detailed planning. And I know the other departments and the fire department participated as well to ensure that we had a safe and successful day with the Harvest Festival. You know, events of this type usually don't go without last-minute changes, and this year was no exception. It all started with Hurricane Ian, which caused us to reschedule the entire event a month later. But as we worked with the town to address and resolve the issues that came up in the days preceding the festival, and certainly the ones that showed up during the festival, it was a pleasure to work with the staff in those circumstances. You know, during the day of the Harvest Festival, I talked to a lot of the town staff who were working and thanked them for the work they were doing. And to a person, they said they were just doing their job. And, you know, I would submit that the way they did their job and the way they carried themselves really contributed to a special day in Wendell for all who visited. And I think we're very fortunate and blessed to have the people that we have working for the town in support of this town. And so it's really an honor for me and humbling for me to say thank you on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and all of our members, on behalf of all of the festival participants, and certainly on behalf of the thousands of visitors who came to Wendell for the Harvest Festival. So thank you to all of you, and all of those that aren't here tonight.
Thank you. Next, Barry Perry.
I'm here for the hearing.
Okay, we'll hold your time for later. Daniel Osborne.
Good evening, Council. My name is Daniel Osborne from 1111 Hunters Grand Trail, Wendell. So I am speaking, trying to appeal to this board in seeking your control to help monitor the growth, the rapid growth in our community. So population, Wendell, according to U.S. Census 2010, 5,845. In 2020, 9,793. 2021, 11,570. According to the Wendell Development website, there are approximately 5,600 dwelling units that are proposed or under construction. If we averaged 2 persons per dwelling, that would be 11,200. We're almost doubling our size in just a short period of time. Our infrastructure cannot handle this. Trying to get services is just becoming more and more of a challenge. On top of already we're dealing with COVID and recovering from that, you know, you think about how many emergency services are, you know, that realm, how can we provide that in a short period of time? Are we ready to do that? Just trying to get emergency services for a business that we had a 1.5-inch water line break, and we couldn't find the leak, trying to get a leak detector company to come out, and we called plumbers and asked to come out and find that. We had one company said, well, it'd be 6 days before we could get there under emergency situation. Another company said what we had to go with was we can come in 4 days for emergency situation. It's just too much. It's more than we can handle. So we realized that the town manager and town planner, they're trying to put things forward. So we don't know everybody's motives. Everybody has a motive for what they do. We know you have a motive for serving in the role that you do, and they have a motive for serving in the role that they do. I appeal to you, don't just rubber stamp. If you want to know what the desires of the citizens are, ask. Most Americans prefer larger houses with more land. What we're going with now is high density, we're packing them in like rats. We're not ready for it. I appeal to you, I ask that you be ready to slow this development, go at a nice steady rate rather than just the boom. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Gibson?
My name is Mark Gibson, 605 Commander Drive, Wendell. On August 24th, I spoke before the Downtown Development Committee and reported the following. Data collected from the start of the Raleigh Social District, August 15th to the 22nd. 32 driving while impaired, 4 driving while license revoked, 12 female driving while impaired, 20 male driving while impaired, and 4 male driving while license revoked. Okay, 15 people were arrested between the ages of 18 and 30. 9 were arrested between the ages of 31 to 40. 4 ages 41 to 50. 7 ages 51 to 60. And 1 age 61 to 70. Conclusion. Our youngest members will be the most vulnerable in making alcohol more acceptable in the community. During the meeting, one member said it's the police department's job to enforce the law. Another member said safety question is beyond the board, beyond the scope of the board. As the town board, please make sure safety is the priority of the town and reject the social district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Dunn?
Hey, I'm Mike Dunn, live at 6601 Celebration Court in Wendell. I really didn't have anything specific to say. I just felt like I needed to be here tonight. Kind of leading off what Daniel was talking about. Wendell is kind of 2 different places. Most of y'all live in the part of Wendell with curb and gutter where you can reach out your bedroom window and touch the house next door. But there's some of us that don't live in the curb and gutter part of Wendell, and we like it that way. But we understand that's changing, and I get it. But I feel like some of y'all won't be content until every square foot of dirt is tax revenue. And at some point, enough is enough. And I understand the growth is coming. I get that. You're going to build up all around us. But what you have in front of you proposed for Eagle Rock Road area and those farms that are about to change is not sensible for the services that are available. We don't get Wendell Police Service. That may change soon. I don't know. Right now, we're dependent on Wake County Sheriff's Department, which is understaffed drastically, which isn't your problem. But the services for the rural part of what is currently rural part of Wendell is not there, and y'all don't have to provide it. But the roads can't handle the traffic. Eagle Rock Road traffic in the morning, especially since school started back, is not reasonable, and especially when you start putting hundreds of more homes in there. So I, like Daniel, would just ask that y'all take a common sense approach to things. And this doesn't have to happen in 2 years or 3 years. Take some time and let this play out. Get what you need in place before you just start cramming out more homes. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve Berry?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Steve Berry.
I live at 1916 Lizard Lick Road, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Southeastern Free Will Baptist College and the meeting we had last Wednesday, and I want to speak directly to the commissioners as well as those who may be watching online. We've had several meetings. I guess in 2006 a road plan was put together and a line put on a map, and then it's continued from there. In 2016 I moved to the area, being an alumnus of the college, married here in 1988, my wife living in the community, going out to Oklahoma from there, time in Florida, and then back here in 2016. Immediately, as a director of development of the college, began to understand the road things and the growth, and I started attending some meetings. Didn't attend all the meetings, but went to enough meetings to kind of understand the line was on the map and it crossed our property. 60.87 acres, and a line going across the middle as a road, proposed road for later at some point, and that road would bisect us right in two. And so I went to enough meetings for those to know in the community, planners and things, to know that we obviously didn't want a road. I actually have a few amendment options today. So Mr. Collins sat in our office with Mr. Coates at a request of a meeting and told us that the road would be there, and we need to make a concession. We finally conceded to the possibility of putting the road on the back of the property, which he pulled his mask down and smiled and was like thankful that there was at least some option. And then, but the road has continued on right across the middle. Oppidan, the company that is coming to make this development, and your board will be put in an untenable situation very soon to where you'll have to make a decision. And I know it is to make a decision to try to change the zoning for them so they can proceed with a $349 million project. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of pressure. And it's causing this board to have to make a decision to choose between growth, $349 million of progress for the community, and against a 35-year-old ministry that Ira Fuller drew us to town and told us that this would be a wonderful place for you to develop your ministry. Wendell's been in existence for 119 years. And now after that, since 1903, now we're at a place to really take off and grow. Well, we, 35 years as a college, sending people all around the world to minister the gospel and to care for hurting, we're ready to take off and grow as well. But now we're being told we're going to have a road right across the middle of our property. Oppidan came into our office and sat down and showed us a picture and offered us a 3-for-1 reverse split. If you do it in the stock analogy, if you do it in a land analogy, it's 3-for-1 theft. 28 acres of ours for 9 acres of what they hope to be able to purchase. They would trade us 28 acres of ours for 9 of theirs. And then they would pay for the road that comes across, which we don't want, we don't need, and it will inhibit us as a ministry. So I would ask us to really, really consider as a community. You're going to have to make that decision. And I understand our planners, I believe at this point, our planners have failed us because they didn't look at other options. They just went for one thing. I see I'm red, so I need to stop. But you have a very difficult situation. I want you to know I'm praying for you every day that God would give you absolute wisdom to take care of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Regina Harmon.
Regina Harmon, 6616 Tails Branch Road. Good evening, Commissioners. John, I'm not sure if you're pro tem or just sitting in or whatever, but thank you for doing what you're doing tonight. Guys, I've been saying for years that I would hope that we would start building better quality homes. We would start giving more variety instead of just stacking them in like sardines. And it seems that people are finally starting to come up here and starting to share their concerns with you, which I'm very grateful. I'm not going to repeat all the things that they've said because you guys have heard it over and over again. But it is time for you guys to slow down and start thinking about each one of these projects coming in and potentially giving us a little bit better variety. None of us are saying we don't want growth. We absolutely want growth. I say that all the time. but we want better growth. We want a variety of homes. We want some choices, so when these people come to our community, they have somewhere to grow into. So that's all we're asking you to do. We're not asking you to stop growing, we're asking you to be more considerate in the growth that you give us. Now, I'm gonna switch hats for a second, and I'd like to talk about the social district real quick. I know that you're probably gonna pass this. I know this is about the overall cost of the social district. We have all these events going on, and I understand that each event, we have to pay a fee, and we have to fill out paperwork, so if you do it over a yearly time frame, it's cheaper, and you don't have to fill out the paperwork on the ongoing. Even though all of the businesses, or at least the ones I've spoken to, do not want this downtown. They don't mind it for the events or anything like that. They like it for that. They just don't want it on an ongoing basis. Now, I'm speaking personally for me. I like it for events, but I have kids that are less than 20 years old working in my store, and I don't want to put them through that on an ongoing time frame where they have to deal with that all the time. But I don't mind it at all for events. So let's compromise. Since you want this overall, for the fact that you don't have to fill the paperwork out on an ongoing basis, and it's a cheaper price because we do so many wonderful events in downtown Wendell. We have a lot of those, and you have a social district at every one of them. We were told by Matt during one of our meetings that we could pick the times. So let's pick event times. Let's do it on an ongoing basis like you want to get the price that you want, but let's pick the events and just the event dates. So it's not every single day, Monday through Friday or whatever, Thursday, Friday, Saturday or whatever, and it's just the event days. That's a great compromise. You get the price that you want, and we still get it for just events, and we're doing something a little bit more unique than every other town out there that is doing the social district at this point. Thank you very much for your time. I see you're really interested in it because I can tell by the way you're looking at me. Y'all have a lovely night.
Thank you. On item 3, consent agenda, if I can get a motion to approve, please.
Motion to approve?
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving to item number 4, recognitions, reports, and presentations. Item 4A, recognition of Carver Elementary School teacher Elizabeth Barrett. Ms. Barrett, if you want to come forward, and then we'll embarrass you a little bit. Ms. Barrett is the backbone of the Carver Special Education Team. She serves in a leadership role at Carver Elementary as our Special Education Coordinator. She is always willing to answer questions, assist with paperwork, problem solve around scheduling, and provide strategies for working with students. She has gone above and beyond to assist a new member of our Carver Special Education Team this year. She is a team player who wants what is best for all students. She is great at building relationships with students and works hard to make mastering basic skills fun and engaging. There is a mutual respect that exists between Ms. Barrett and her students due to the time she invests in learning who they are. Ms. Barrett is a team player and always willing to step into support during challenging situations. Ms. Barrett collaborates with classroom teachers who benefit from her recommendations and suggestions to help support the learning needs of all students. In addition to working hard to meet the academic and social emotional needs of her students, she supports the total school environment by helping where needed and maintaining positive relationships with students, staff, and families. We are so proud to have Ms. Barrett as a member of our Carver team. And we were proud to have you as a member of our community, Ms. Barrett, and thank you so much for coming tonight. We want to bring you out and recognize you, and you have the floor if you'd like to say anything.
I'm honored to be here, part of Wendell. I moved to North Carolina 7 years ago, and I've been here 6 years, and I absolutely love it. You guys have a wonderful community, and I'm just honored to be a part.
Well, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Okay, thank you.
On to item 4B, Go Wake Smart Ride Northeast presentation. Mr. Coates.
Yep, good evening, Commissioners. I'm going to do a quick introduction here in just a moment. Let me move the slides along. I'd like to introduce from Wake County, Anita Davis, who's a transportation manager, and then Amber Scott, who's a transit analyst for Wake County. They have a presentation for you today. on the Smart Ride service, which is operational. It's really exciting to have this type of service here in the eastern part of Wake County, and I'm excited for them to present the data so far on the transit system. So Anita and Amber, come on up.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you so much, Commissioners, for allowing us to come into your beautiful town and to bring transportation to the town of Wendell. We are so excited about this project that initially started a year before the COVID pandemic. Well, before I say that, I'm Anita Davis, by the way. I just get into it because I'm just so passionate and excited about transportation. And this is Ms. Amber Scott, who
Hello.
is a transportation analyst that's been with us for, 60 days now?
September 6th.
September 6th, and we are putting her to work. So let me make sure that I got this together. So as I stated, what we're going to talk about is the Go Wake Smart Ride NE, which stands for Northeast. Of course, this is transportation, microtransit, which is fairly new. It's becoming so huge right now, microtransit, as we think of what rural transportation is going to look like in the next couple of years. Gone are the days where it's always going to be fixed route services because it's expensive. And of course, in the rural areas, you don't have the density for that. Then you have demand response, which Go Wake Access does, and then you have some paratransit. But microtransit is here to kind of bring all of that together, to kind of bring some of that intertown transportation, and to be another to break down the barriers of people having access to transit in their towns. So we're going to talk a little bit about the project, how we got started. We're going to review the existing data for Wendell, so their service enhancements, and then we're going to leave the ending portion open for questions and open discussion. So as I stated, Wake County, we were awarded an FTA grant back in, I think, 2018, 2019. And the IMI grant stands for Integrated Mobility Integration. So the role of this was we wanted to find transportation. What kind of transportation could we bring to the area? One, it was innovative, so it was going to be using technology. What kind of technology? Well, the same technology you use right now for your Uber, for your Lyft. How great is it to be able to get public transportation at an affordable cost, right from going to your phone? So the same way that everyone uses Uber now, you can still use your Uber app, but instead of an Uber vehicle coming, you're going to see that Go Wake Smart Ride NE. We picked this area, which of course is going to be the Zebulon area, the Wendell area, and Roseville. We picked this area after a lot of information. We had to gather some census data. We had to figure out what would be the best place to bring transportation where there is no fixed route transportation. It's going to be a while before fixed route gets to these areas. Our main goal of bringing this transportation to the area, of course, was to improve access to schools, jobs, healthcare, and other services for the Northeast County residents. And the objective is to launch microtransit services that provide the first 5 mile and the last 5 mile for rural residents. And people say, well, why the first 5 mile? Because most microtransit services do the first mile and the last mile. Well, we recognize that the area is so expanded. There's so many people living in the rural areas. And as I stated, there is not any fixed route. There is the express route that Go Raleigh presents to us, but there's still people who need to get to that area. So if you don't live right around the express route, how are you going to get there if you don't have transportation? So that's why it's so valuable for us to have this Smart Ride area, this Smart Ride transportation, so that people would be able to get from the furthest parts of Wendell and still be able to get to that expressed area to utilize the transportation. What is microtransit? So microtransit is on demand in real time. You can book when you're ready. So with our regular Go Wake demand services, you either have to call 30 days in advance or you have to call the day before, and that's not helpful sometimes. Sometimes you have to get to the grocery store and you don't want to call a day in advance. You get home from work, you realize you need some tomatoes. You don't have transportation. What do? You can use the service. It also provides dynamic routing and scheduling. The route is going to vary. So unlike with a fixed route service where it kind of goes the same route every single day, day in and day out, this microtransit services allows you to go anywhere within that geofence zone that you need to get to. And as I stated, It does provide shorter trips, so you don't have to ride from Wendell to Fuquay or to all these other places. You can travel within your town to get to where you need to get. And as I stated as well, it leverages your smartphone with new technology. So you could use your phone, request the transportation, or you can still call into our call center and speak with a live agent that will be able to do that for you. So before we even developed the microtransit service, what we had to do, we had to get a microtransit service plan together. So we consulted with KFH to develop the plan for us. Within that plan, of course, consisted of a communications plan, an operations plan, capital and technology, 5-year financial plan, evaluation, and of course, RFP for contract of the services. The communications plan, it included Board of Committee Commissioner presentations. So just like the same meetings we're doing here, we went to Wake County Board of Commissioners, we went to Zebulon, and we went to Roseville to kind of talk about, this is what microtransit services look like. This is what we can provide the citizens of your town. We did stakeholder interviews, and that consisted of the Wake County Human Services Regional Centers. So Eastern Regional, Northern Regional, and Southern Regional would be able to tell us what we believe that transportation needs to look like. We know what our citizens need. We know where the complaints are. We know that Go Wake Access provides, a very limited services, but the demand way supersedes that. We hosted focus groups where we spoke to the Latina community, we spoke to the elderly and disabled community, and we said, what would this transportation need to look like for you? And the same thing, we have a Go Wake, but we want more transportation. We need flexible transportation. We're not on Medicaid. We may not be elderly or disabled, but we still need transportation. We still need to get around the town. And of course, also with that information, we was able to provide an online survey. And I wish my other data was here, but it's not. But we're able to provide an online survey to the citizens that utilize the Go Wakes on-demand services. And overwhelmingly, they said, yes, we want more transportation. Yes, we want to be able to use it fare-free. Yes, we want to be able to call it when we need to call it, and versus having to call the day before, even 30 days in advance. As I stated, when we did the KFH plan for microtransit, the operations plan, so we had to look at the existing Go Wake Access trip data, the demographics, the microtransit propensity index, as well as service characteristics, what's in the area. So back when we initially did this presentation and pulled the information together, we looked at what Go Wake Access was currently doing at the time. So, of course, this is pre-COVID numbers before everything got super crazy, but you can see here that there's at least 25,000 Go Wake trips that were provided just in this area alone. So we have employment, general purposes, and medical. That's a lot of trips. And then, of course, there's some senior services. We looked at the information from Zebulon to Raleigh, Wendell to Raleigh, Zebulon to Wendell, and of course, Roseville to Roseville, and Roseville to Raleigh. As I stated, for our microtransit goals, it's quicker and easier trip scheduling, more convenient and shorter trips, connections to regional commuter routes, real-time arrival updates, and of course, to expand the ridership beyond the current 148 riders that we have. Here's a map of what we initially started with. So you have the areas that stretches up here in the northern area of Roseville. And then, of course, it comes down to Wendell, Zebulon, and the express route that goes into Knightdale. The existing services are highlighted in the yellow and in the orange and in the yellow. It represents Go Wake, Route 33 for Knightdale, Route 401X for Roseville, and then the ZWX, Zebulon, Wendell, and Raleigh Express. So let's talk about where we are today. All that boring stuff, you have to do the planning and the implementation and all that good stuff. That's all good stuff. But the stuff right now, as far as what are we doing right now? So the service initially launched on March 21st of this calendar year, and as I said, it is ride share, so that makes it actually very cost effective that people are able to utilize and commingle of the services. It currently services Zebulon, Wendell, and Roseville, and in unincorporated areas in between. And of course, the best part is it is fare free. Thank you to Wake County Board of Commissioners for agreeing to that. As I stated before, the way that you can request a ride is that you can use the Uber app, or you can contact the Go Wake Access call center, and that service operates Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Where we are today, as well as how many trips have we completed just in the Wendell area compared to all of the service zones. So if you look at it, for all of the geofence service zone, 4,816 trips, and that's within the first 6 months. Wendell, 1,033. The operating cost per passenger, now this right here, it looks a little high, it says $88.82. The way that calculates, and usually it's around $35. The way it's calculating is there is no way for the information to be broke down just for the Wendell. When we gather the data, it looks at all of the geofence area as a whole. Reservations could be made via the app, and we have right now about 565 people that utilizes the app. We have about 440 that uses Uber Central, which is our call center, and these 28 bounce passengers. What bounce passengers are is if I want to schedule transportation, I put it in my name, but it's actually for my daughter. That's what they consider bounce transportation, or bounce passengers. Oh, so Amber wants me to skip through all of this because she wants to actually do something that's a little interactive and make it a little fun for you guys. So do you want to take over from me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll pull up the Power BI.
Okay, okay.
If you go, see if the Mark has it. Yep, there we go.
Okay, so hi, I'm Amber. I am the transit analyst, like Anita announced for Go Wake Access. So what we have here is basically our Smart Ride summary. It gives the summary of the total riders within that geofence zone that Anita was talking about. So like when she was explaining the cost per passenger, it's based upon just the numbers of passengers in Wendell when we have a total of 5,594, so it would give you around that $35 that she was talking about. So the total completed trip count we have here is the 4,816. There's 5,594 total riders. The wait time for each trip is around 18 and a half minutes, and the average time on trip is about 14-ish minutes. Our peak time of service is 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and I have some top 5 frequent addresses here. I will zoom in on the one that is in Wendell. And it is definitely East Wake High School. So to go with the spiel that Anita was giving about giving people better access to schools and services in their community, Smart Ride has been a very, 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 very lucrative, I think, asset to helping students get to school and from school. So I'm going to go just to Wendell. So here are Wendell specific trips. So the total riders, we have 1,176 riders, and this is counted by seats. So it's basically just the amount of people that got on, even if they did not book. So if they brought a friend or they brought 2 friends, this counts all of them. There have been 1,033 completed trips, and these are just from the origin of within the municipality of Wendell. And it's about 5.24 miles per trip. And I also included a chart here that shows how much that the trips in Wendell have skyrocketed all the way since the implementation in March till October. So you can see we kind of had a little summer drop, but as soon as school was back in, and it's just going up and up. And I think that just comes with word of mouth and the utilization of the service. People know about it more, so the more that they know about it, the more they're willing to use it. Also here we have the booking method. Anita kind of went over these numbers where there's 565 by app, 440 by Uber Central, which is our call center, and 28 by Bounce, booking for a child, an elderly person, or just booking for someone else. And then we also have the total trips by corporate limit. So if you have 821 trips that are coming out of Wendell's corporate limit into Wendell's corporate limit, and then we have about 212 trips that are either going to another corporate limit or town or an unincorporated area. Did anyone have any questions? No? Okay. I'll move on to origin and destination. So right here, I have the origin and destinations of all of the addressed Wendell municipality trips, so within the city limits. So here we have all of our origin trips. You can see where all of our trips are originating from, and a lot of the origin trips are coming from right there in that Wendell municipality, and there are some outliers here, but you can see the vast majority is in here in this small area. And then we're seeing that in the destination trips that people are going, like Anita was talking about, they're going from town to town. There's a lot of Wendell to Wendell, and there's a lot of Wendell to Zebulon and Zebulon to Wendell, and vice versa. So, did anyone have any questions about that? No? Okay, well, I will turn it back over to Anita. Thank you guys for listening.
And she talks that fast all the time, so no.
I know, I'm so sorry.
I'm teasing. Okay. Oh, we have to back. So what I have here, just a little bit more maps to kind of talk about what the first and second quarter, well, actually, this is what the second quarter information looked like. Kind of breaks down origin, of course, destination, in regards to what we did for the second quarter. The number of trips for Knightdale was 23, Roseville 47, Wendell 513, and for Zebulon 1,149. Of course, that's origin, and then destination, Knightdale 53. There was actually one to Raleigh. We're still trying to figure out who that person was because they were not supposed to get to Raleigh. 74 for Roseville, 520 for Wendell, and 1,189 for Zebulon. As I stated, this is based on origin and destination municipality. We also have origin and destination for jurisdiction. And with the way that we just listed it as Wake County, because at that time we couldn't pull the information for the unincorporated areas. The trips that you see here, Wendell and then Zebulon, 185 for Wendell, 41 trips for Zebulon. And destination, these people leaving from Wake County, Wendell, Zebulon, going into Wake, Wendell, and Zebulon. Okay, this map here is the same information, but it kind of shows you in density as well. Kind of see where some of the hot spots are. What the data does show us is definitely there's just as many trips in the unincorporated areas of the county as they are within inside. So that's super impressive. And also kind of tells you exactly where the demand is and how great the transportation is for the services for the area. Top frequent destinations, and Amber already pulled up some of that during her Power BI presentation, but what we're noticing is, okay, San Jose Mexican restaurant, whether people are working or they just, like me, love Mexican food, that's where they're going. The Walmart Supercenter, same thing, people are going to shop, people are going to work. It's a very busy area. So we're equally elated that there is so much transportation that we're able to provide to the area, whether it's to employers or just for general purposes. Shepherd School Road, there's a residential area, and I think it was an apartment complex.
It was.
And of course, the Food Line. Everybody loves Food Line. We're glad to see that we're providing services, a lot of services to that area as well. So we talked about how we got to the service, why we developed the service, what the existing services were, but now we're going to talk about a little bit of how do we evaluate how great the service is. Is it something that could be sustainable? So, as I stated before, our goals for microtransit is to exceed tripling the number of residents in the zone that use public transit. And that's not just for our frequent riders that already utilize our on-demand services, but for our non-traditional riders, our choice riders that say, well, I don't qualify for any of those services, but I do want to get to the park on a night stay. I do want to go to the local church, but I have no way to get there. Well, yes, you do. You have us. We wanted to decrease the average one-way passenger trip cost by 25%. Our traditional performance measure is going to be the typical reporting measures as reported to the NTD. Cost per trip is a key variable for local funding formulas. And of course, emerging performance measures, accessibility or service coverage, shared rides, which is huge, connections to transit, which we provide, and of course, customer satisfaction, the reliability, the wait times, and the usage. So where do we go from here? So this project is it's going to be from 1 year. It started from March of this calendar year, and it's going to go to March of 2020, late to March 2023. So what do we do to continue the services that we just definitely know that this town deserves? We looked at if there's additional federal funding, if there's Wake Transit funding, but it's in a Wake Transit funding area. However, because it's inter-town related, there is CFA funds, which is community funding area funds that are available to continue the service. Some important dates that's coming up. Of course, the call for projects for the community funding area just opened at the end of October. There's going to be some pre-submittal review meetings that happens between November 14th and the 18th, as well as December 5th through the 9th. The call for projects application closes on January the 6th, which is the day before my birthday. And Campo staff score submissions January the 9th through January 27th. So definitely some preparation within the next couple of weeks. At this point, we will leave this open. Are there any questions?
Quick question. The East Wake thing, is that kids going
I'm
to
sorry?
school, East Wake High School? Or is
Yes.
it people working there?
No, it's people actually going to school.
So they don't use the school buses we
Some of
already
the-
provide? Or-
So what's happening is, you do know, just as there is a shortage of drivers for all of the transit services, for Go Wake, for Go Raleigh, Go Cary, Go Triangle, there's also a shortage of drivers for Wake County Public Schools as well. So what we're seeing is, either whether the kids are going to school or they're getting picked up from school, if the bus is not gonna be on time, or if the bus is not going to come, or it could be like the kid wants to go to the Walmart or San Jose after school, they will call and utilize the service. So, and that presents its own challenges because we're not a school bus service, but we are public transportation.
We already paying for school buses.
Right.
We're already paying for school buses.
Absolutely.
All right,
So we're
just
not
wondering.
public transportation for school, but we do utilize, there are some students that use the service, so.
Yeah, just to
So you could,
piggyback on that, I don't think it's unheard of. I've heard of parents, they get a message in the morning or the night before or during the day that, hey, there's no bus service for you today. So
Yes.
I was going to ask where the location was, and then when you said East Wake, I kind of assumed that was.
Thanks.
That is it, yes.
San Jose does have fantastic tableside guacamole, though.
I've never been.
Never been. Definitely a lot of service there.
So are y'all moving forward with that round, the application that you kind of laid out that timeline?
We would like to move forward with it, but Wake County, we're not allowed to apply for CFA. The projects, we could be a project sponsor, so like the town of Wendell, the town of Zebulon, they would have to be the project leads to go forth with submitting application to continue the service. And of course, Go Wake would be there to provide all the statistical data, operational analysis, cost analysis data to support that.
I have two quick questions. What is the difference? You showed medical versus senior services.
Mm-hmm.
And senior services, I don't remember the number, but maybe it was 65 versus 500 and some. What is the difference in those two? If you have a senior that is using the service for medical, or what exactly is a senior service? I ask that because I've talked about this service at the senior center,
Mm-hmm.
here in town, and every time I have the conversation, they're excited about it. It's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I see 65, are people utilizing it? Or would that fall into 19,000, the medical category?
It could potentially be both.
Okay.
The way we can also look at this is by funding sources. So when you see employment, when you see general purposes, when you see medical, and when you see senior services, you're also seeing a funding source for that. So that could also be commingled with individuals that have Medicaid, and they're going to dialysis. So they're using a different funding source. It could also be where they're EdTap and disabled, so there's a certain funding source with that as well. The senior services could be a representation of people that are going to the nutrition sites. And it's a small number within this area. So it's a combination of both. We have a very high elderly and disabled population that does utilize all of the Go Wake services, whether it's on the demand, which is the biggest one, and then some are actually starting to use the Smart Ride service as well.
That's one of the questions I get, just as far as participation at the senior center. Transportation is obviously an issue sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so, do we receive any feedback from riders or people that don't utilize the service? And the reason I ask that is from a senior standpoint, you know, if a senior is not willing to use the service, do we know why? Because in my mind, it's fantastic. Is it a technology gap, but they can call? Are we receiving feedback?
It's a combination of everything, and we're actually in preparation of sending out a senior survey, a survey overall. Back in, I want to say March and April of this, right before we launched the service, we hosted a class with, oh gosh, I do forget the name of the services that we use. But we did a class that was able to provide services, Microsoft services, where we were able to teach people the elderly, how to utilize the computer. A part of that was also teaching them how to access the app. And once they completed the whole class, I think it was like 4 weeks, we were able to provide them a laptop. And some of their feedback was, yes, I like transportation. Yes, I need more frequent, reliable transportation. I'm not too keen on using the app, though, because I'm a little nervous about that. But we made sure that they understood that not only could you use the app, but you can still call in and speak to a live person. Like, my mom would be that person. It's like, she just got rid of her flip phone a couple of weeks ago. So she would be one of those people that say, no, I'm not going to use the phone to do anything. I'm just going to call you. But from the information that we received when we did the focus groups, they said they do want the transportation. And we do know that, some people are a little apprehensive. They weren't sure if a regular Uber car was going to come, if they had to ride by themselves. Yes,
riding with a stranger.
Riding with a
What I
stranger.
got.
Yeah, so we kept the same idea of making sure that this is still a shared ride. So you're going to have multiple people up there, so you don't have to feel unsafe that, some random person in Toyota Corolla is going to come and pick you up or something. But you still have that feel of being in fixed route. That feel of being in a van shared with people. We still have the same services where there's a camera in the front and the back, so there's that added safety. The dispatcher has not only the services, their tablet to be able to communicate with the dispatch officers and the drivers, but then they have their radio. So if something happens in that case, then there's always always a backup plan to keep people safe as possible.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you for what you guys are doing. So,
wonderful.
I just had a quick question too as well. The hours, what's the hours of this is available?
It is available from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday.
And then, so a lot of times I'll have patients in my office who will, be sitting around for 2 or 3 hours after their appointment's finished, waiting for their ride. What is the response time like if they were there and we just needed to call the service for them on their behalf? How long on average do they wait for somebody to come get them, I guess?
Okay, remember, it was basically, the wait time was 15 minutes?
Yeah,
Trying to get to that screen.
Basically like
There we go,
Uber.
yep, 18.52
15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, and just because I know this would be a question if I kind of got down this rabbit hole, how long do you, most patients ride in the car before they get to their destination?
14.15.
Making sure you guys are paying attention too, because obviously I was too busy focused on what I gotta do next here. Sorry about that, thank you.
No problem at all. And if you have any other questions or any other additional data that you would like, please feel free to reach out myself, or you can contact Brian and he'll get the information to me.
Brian wouldn't share any of it because you guys were coming, so he didn't want to steal your
Want to
thunder.
share, Brian?
We want to steal your thunder.
Oh, okay.
I wanted y'all to have your time. I'm at that podium enough.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, item 4C, proclamation honoring the first launch Wendell cohorts. Matt Gardner, or,
Nope, Matt's coming up. I'm just switching
Okay.
out PowerPoints.
I believe you should have the proclamation in front of you.
yes, sir. I didn't know if you need to add anything to that, you mean just to go through the proclamation?
Oh, I'm happy to add just a little context for those listening. We had our first ever Launch Wendell class this spring, and they had fulfilled their obligations earlier this fall. We had originally planned for a graduation on a night that the meeting was canceled. So in lieu of that, they received certificates digitally honoring them for their participation in the class, and we thought a proclamation from the town board would be a great way of telling them that they were important not only because they went through the class, but they were the first to do so.
I will read the proclamation here into the record. Proclamation honoring the inaugural class of Launch Wendell. Whereas the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners recognizes the need and importance of developing a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem, and whereas Launch Wake County, a program of Wake Technical College, is a collaborative community-based economic development program that is customized by town, community, and demographic using the nationally recognized Launch My City model. And whereas Launch Wake County has become a movement to nurture homegrown, primarily Main Street businesses across the county by promoting access to quality training, mentoring, networking opportunities, and access to capital. And whereas the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners, in partnership with the Wendell Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary Club of Wendell, determined the Launch Wake County model appropriate for the formation of Launch Wendell. And whereas the inaugural cohort of Launch Wendell took place in the spring of 2022, and whereas the inaugural cohort of Launch Wendell has completed their work and fulfilled the necessary obligations to graduate from Launch Wendell, and whereas the graduating class includes Billy Jensen, Chris Lawson, Chantel Taylor, Daniela Henderson, Jaha Cruz, Patricia Mile Mosley, Kiki Walford, Nakia Bailey, Carlos Santiago, John Harris, Julius White, and Jerry Brown. Now therefore, on behalf of the Wendell Board of Commissioners, I, John Lute of the Town of Wendell, do honor and commend the first ever graduating cohort of Launch Wendell and look forward to the continued development of entrepreneurs in our community, duly proclaimed this the 14th day of November, 2022.
Thank you. And I would also be remiss to not mention, as I should have earlier, that recruitment is now open for our second class, which will be this spring, starting February 2nd through April 27th. If you know somebody that is interested in being a participant, please have them reach out to me. The information is on our website and on the Facebook page, or if you know someone who would like to be a mentor in the program, please do the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along to item 4D, social district community feedback and draft policy presentation. Matt again.
Thank you. So we first presented this to you in August. That was sort of a presentation on social districts as a general concept. The main takeaway from that meeting was that the board would like a lot of community feedback. So over the last couple months, that has been our plan, and the Downtown Development Committee, in concert with myself, have tried to collect a lot of feedback to present to you sort of a draft proposal tonight, and see where you would like us to continue that effort. So in an effort to increase foot traffic and promote the economic vibrancy and opportunity in downtown Wendell, the Town of Wendell is considering the adoption of a social district. Since the authorizing legislation passed in September of 2021, many communities across the state have adopted similar districts to much success, including nearby communities like Raleigh, recently Fuquay-Varina, and Wilson, and similarly sized communities such as Oxford, Newton, and Albemarle. I think that second point is important because we often think of these things as the sip and stroll in Raleigh, which is a very, very large town, or even the borough in Greensboro, which is, again, a very large town. But they do exist and work well in smaller Main Street communities such as ours. So we made a bunch of efforts to gather public feedback. I'll go over this in a minute, so I'm not going to read all of that. And then based on those efforts, we have some draft recommendations. So the first and largest public input gathering tool was the public survey, which was active from September 1st through October 16th. It had 4 questions. The first one was required. The rest of the 3 were not. As you can tell, the responses sort of dwindle from the first question. The survey in total had 549 participants. And the first question was, are you in favor of a social district in downtown Wendell? 80% of the respondents said yes, 17% said no, and 2% were undecided at the time that they took the survey. Question 2, besides the potential downtown social district, would you be in favor of other alternative social districts? In our first presentation, there were a number of questions about a potential second district or district elsewhere besides downtown, so we felt prudent to include that question while we were already gathering input. In response to that, 76% said yes and 24% said no. Question 3 was, many communities have active social districts every day of the week, while some restrict them to weekends and holidays only. Which would you prefer? 70% of the respondents said 7 days a week, 31% said weekends and holidays only. Yes, that adds up to 101, a rounding situation in the data. And to that point, after you've decided in the first question whether or not you would like a social district or would be in favor of one, it is up to the board to decide when it should exist, where it should exist, and for how long during those times it should exist. And then question 4 was, what types of drinks do you think should be allowed in a Wendell social district? 80% of the respondents of that question said beer, wine, and mixed drinks, and 20% said beer and wine only. Prior to the most recent change in the statute, which occurred in June, mixed drinks were not allowed in social districts. It was a beer and wine only situation. So we included that question just to make sure that if all of them were allowed, that it fit with our community character. It's been discussed at multiple Downtown Development Committee meetings in July, August, and October, and they were part of the planning efforts for this public feedback, which I really appreciated. We had a downtown business specific meeting on October the 5th. There were representatives from 5 downtown businesses at that meeting. Downtown businesses were hand-delivered an invitation from myself, as well as information from the North Carolina Retail Merchants Association on social districts in general. I invited people to give me feedback in person when I handed those out. And we had a good discussion that evening of October the 5th. The following week, we had a public engagement meeting. I call it a charrette. There was a series of boards placed around the room with information about social districts and about a Wendell potential social district, and we invited people to stop by for a couple hours on that Wednesday afternoon. We had probably around 20 people throughout the evening attend, including a few of you, which I again appreciate. So distilling all the results of this public comment, discussions with staff, discussions with the Downtown Development Committee, most recently at their October meeting, we have a sort of draft proposal. So the map in front of you includes all of the ABC permitted businesses in downtown Wendell. The boundaries of the proposed social district are important because they allow for people that are contiguous to them as well as people inside of them to be included. So if you have an entry into the social district, you are in the social district even if you are not within the blue lines. All you have to do is be touching the blue lines. So the specifics of the drawing are important in that aspect, but they can be modified in the future. If another restaurant opens up near the social district and would like to be included, I would propose that we have a formal sort of application for the expansion so that there's something on the record saying that X business would like the boundary to be expanded, and then you, the board, could decide whether or not that made sense. And then our DDC recommended and staff recommended times at this point are 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and operational Monday through Sunday. If you look across the state at most of the ones that have been approved, they have been approved for every day of the week and for consistent hours every day of the week. There's some variation to that in some communities that have them only on the weekends, or some communities that have them end earlier on certain days or start later on certain days of the week. But what I've heard from town staff, town attorneys, and town police officers is that consistency is extremely helpful in this situation. And in order to sort of gain information about business participation, we would have sort of a simple one-page registration that says, I understand what a social district means, I would like to be included, I would not like to be included, or I'm a business that would sell alcohol. And that would be represented on the front of their door by a sticker such as the one on the bottom, which is from downtown Oxford's social district. Technically, it's not required that a business display a sign that they are not participating. We definitely feel like consistency of having a sign on every door is helpful for consumers as well as the businesses to make sure that the person who's about to walk in knows exactly what they're about to walk into. Some of the other considerations for social districts are the way they impact special events. So special events that have their own ABC permits for alcohol sales have distinct boundaries from a social district. So another thing that's within the board's discretion to decide is if there's an ABC permitted event on Main Street, do we shut down the entire district, or do we shut down just the portion covered by the permit? Given the size of our downtown, there's logistical issues with only shutting down one street and keeping it operational everywhere else. But that is something that is within our discretion. If the board chooses to move forward with this as a potential sort of timeline, just as an FYI, this presentation tonight is on November 14th, obviously. The ordinance itself establishing the social district, because it has a criminal penalty attached to violation of social district ordinances, requires 2 ordinance readings, so 2 meetings of reading the ordinance. Our Public Works Department has indicated that procuring and installing signs at the boundaries of such a district would take about a month, and we would also need to create a logo to go on the stickers and the signs. All of that can happen concurrently, obviously, but the approval for ABC's purposes would also take about a month, which has been consistent with other communities that have adopted theirs. So if it was approved today, it would still be a month or 2 months before we could roll it out. And given the weather in January and February in North Carolina, there's not necessarily a rush to do so anyway. At this point, I'm happy to take any feedback you may have as far as our direction moving forwards, or answer any questions you may have about the process or social districts in general.
Any questions from the board?
2 quick things. First, I think, well, thanks first. First, I think January or February weather would make for a great soft launch. So keep that in mind as we talk about timeline. But hour-wise, I'm very conscious of the value of consistency of the hours. Personally, I would really appreciate it if the Sunday hours started at 1 o'clock. And I don't know where the rest of the board is at on that, and I don't know if that's something we need to talk about further now or later on. And that's the one piece of this that if I had the magic pen, would tweak a little bit.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Are the other towns you've looked into, what kind of issues and problems have they had doing this? Any kind of?
So during the planning process, most towns identify litter as their main sort of concern in a district like this. Most towns, besides the mega towns that have adopted these, such as Raleigh, haven't had any issues with litter. We would definitely monitor the situation after rollout, myself and our Public Works team, to make sure that we have adequate staffing, we have adequate trash cans, we have adequate trash bags, to make sure that we're accommodating for the increased potential in garbage creation. it's important to note that in the planning process, there's a lot of sentiment about safety as it pertains to alcohol. This does nothing to increase the availability of alcohol. It doesn't increase your ability to purchase more than you can now. All the current ABC laws, regulations, all the current law enforcement that exists today will exist in a social district. This only changes where it's legal to drink it. And we think that by advocating for people to move out of siloed places like restaurants and drinking establishments, moving out into the streets, moving into other businesses, that we're increasing foot traffic and therefore increasing the economic vitality of the downtown. None of that increases crime or any sort of problem behavior.
So there's no list of like more fights or drunkenness and craziness like in the towns or anything?
Not that I've heard.
Just checking, I want to ask, for the safety of Wendell,
No, absolutely. And to be fair, the large towns where we would expect or could expect there to be an increase in crime or increase in violent crime or alcohol-related crime, they have those problems before the social district. We don't have problems with vagrancy. We don't have problems with, generally speaking, we don't have problems with vagrancy. We don't have problems with DUIs. And we won't, in my opinion, have an increased problem with them afterwards.
Thanks.
I do have a couple of things I'd like to ask. Piggyback on what Commissioner Eaton said, I'm all for consistency. I think if we do one outlier, perhaps it's Sunday start time. And explain the blue lines to me. You mentioned something about maybe you're not inside the perimeter, but it's touching the blue line. So, and the example I'll ask is the pottery place for me is the Cypress and 3rd Street. That's outside of the blue line.
Yes.
But is it touching the blue line? Would it?
Not in this drawing.
Okay.
This is just a draft, and so we could move it to include Zebulon Pottery. In this particular instance, just as an illustrative point, the businesses on East 3rd Street, where Helping Hands Ministry is currently, they are included in the district because they are contiguous to it, but they are not technically within the blue line,
Okay.
whereas the blue line is only on the south side of the street where Zebulon Pottery is, not on the north side.
Okay.
So they're not touching the line.
Okay.
It could be moved,
If
obviously.
you move the line to the other side of the street, they're touching the line at that point. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I got you. That makes sense. You mentioned the smaller communities as being, perhaps more indicative for us. Do they, I think you listed 3, are they 7 days a week?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So those 3 are 7 days a week. And then just for example purposes, we have the chamber here.
Mhm.
If we're having the Harvest Festival, how does that impact the social district, or how does the social district impact the Harvest Festival?
So technically, from a legal standpoint, there is no interaction unless they have an ABC permit. So if they sell their own alcohol and thus get a special event permit from the ABC to sell alcohol, that boundary is distinct from the social district. So if it exists, like Harvest Festival does on 3rd Street and Main Street, then technically on 3rd Street and Main Street, that boundary is for the Harvest Festival, and alcohol can't leave the Harvest Festival, and it can't leave the social district, and it can't go between the two, which is my point about having ordinance language to shut down the entire social district while there's a special event. On the flip side, if they don't have an ABC permit and it's a different kind of event and they also don't want alcohol, we could change our special event permits for public space usage to have a line that asks, like, would you like the social district to exist while you are in operation?
Yes.
Or something like that. I am definitely sympathetic to the potential for children-themed events, not wanting people walking around with alcohol inside of them. So if that's something that the board wishes, that's definitely something that's within their discretion.
So you close the social district altogether during an event, or in the example of the Harvest Festival, if the Harvest Festival does not have an ABC permit and they are okay with,
Yes, then
Social
businesses can
district
still
stays
sell
in-
alcohol and
Okay.
people can walk around within it. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
fair enough, thank you.
Matt, you mentioned having two different meetings. I think you said one was with ABC licensed businesses. Is that correct? And the other was just with other businesses?
So technically, we had 3 meetings. I met individually with the ABC permitted
Okay.
businesses, one-on-one, as they have a slightly higher stake and may not want to voice their opinion about this specific thing in front of their competitors, quote unquote. Then we had a business-specific meeting where the downtown businesses as a whole that were included in this area were invited, and 5 of them chose to attend, and then there was a public meeting.
So then my question, and you don't have to call anybody out, but the restaurants, drinking establishments, et cetera, what was their general overall feel towards this?
It was mixed.
Okay.
For sure. I would say of the 6 that exist in Wendell, there's a majority of them that would be in favor of it. And I think that moving forward, that sort of spirit of cooperation between the ABC permit businesses is stuff we see in other communities, where they all work really well together. The Bearded Bee, for instance, just attended the Craft Brewers Guild meeting in Winston-Salem, and all of them work hand in hand together. So if there's a second brewery, I don't see that as a problem, the same way that if my product in a social district is being sold and so is theirs, and now they can cross boundaries, they don't see it as a problem, so I don't necessarily either. We definitely wouldn't be bringing this forward to you today if all of them said no.
Sure. And then as far as just the other businesses, what was their overall general expression?
So there were some questions about traffic speeds on Main Street as it exists today, which we don't have data to back up that it's a dangerous intersection. And even if it was, it's being redesigned in the spring as part of our streetscape redesign. There were some questions about private business insurance for businesses that don't sell alcohol currently. Is adding alcohol technically into my environment going to increase my rate? We can't necessarily comment on people's individual policies. I can say that we spoke to the League of Municipalities about our policy, and the sort of increase in alcohol in the street doesn't increase our town liability as per the insurance company. So I assume the same would be similar for private businesses. There was some sentiment from a couple of the businesses that they would prefer a weekends only or events only sort of rollout, and we definitely hear that, but I think the public sentiment is that it works better more days of the week, and I agree. I mean, we already have a pretty high turnout of people Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so this helps the Monday through Wednesday of that, or the Sunday afternoon when people are at their house, maybe they'll be downtown.
So, and I'll just kind of speak to it. I kind of mentioned this last time a little bit. I'm kind of more of a all or none, I guess. To me, I don't have a problem with somebody standing out, walking across Main Street, walking from one restaurant to the other, and having a drink. The theory of this doesn't bother me. I don't want to ever create more work for staff of the town, having to oversee this. I don't want it to be a confusing thing for citizens. I also don't want to be a thing for businesses downtown to ever feel like, because a business doesn't necessarily want alcohol in their business, that it hurts their business. I mean, if my pizza joint allows it and Dean's doesn't, and people are like, well, I'm gonna come to John now, they could say, well, it's a bad business decision on Dean's, but it may be just something that he has the best pizza in town, but I don't know, I don't want to be a thing that people look at and say, well, we don't go there anymore because we can't carry beer in there. And that's my only concern. I guess to me, as a consumer, I've never felt like I needed to walk from one place to the other with a beer or a drink. I don't mind the theory of the policy. I want it to accomplish something, I guess, is my point. And if it's put here because we can do it, but it's not just accomplishing something, maybe only causing moisture in the background, I don't know if I'm in favor with it as much. If it opens up new avenues and new ventures and helps the downtown prosper, let's do it. I don't think I'll stop much for that too. And that's my only concern, and I don't know if there's a way of knowing that answer without, either doing it or not doing it. I'll just say from a, you know, person who spends some time downtown, it's active, it's a vibrant place. I don't know if this is going to enhance that at all. I mean, I think it's already a pretty cool place, pretty cool downtown vibe. And I don't know if this is going to really enhance that or just add more confusion. So that's my only concern. So.
And to that point, I will just say, you know, the Retail Merchants Association was one of the bigger lobbies for this. And they're not necessarily only lobbying for the alcohol establishments. What we've found most in a lot of these other communities is that the places that don't sell alcohol are benefiting the most from this.
Okay.
So the people, you know, that normally would be at the Bearded Bee and are buying a beer and sitting there until it's time to order another one. Now, if their kid wants to go get ice cream, they can go get ice cream. Or now, if their wife wants something different to drink and that can only be gotten at a different establishment, now they can all go together as a family. Or for the single woman who orders a drink at the Bearded Bee but wants to go somewhere but doesn't want to leave her drink, feels the need to finish it or potentially leave it on a table unattended, now they can bring it with them. And all of those are things that increase foot traffic. And as the town grows, it'll make more and more sense as it expands into a larger place where there's more places to walk. And as a recruitment tool, as we talk to restaurants, as we recruit restaurants, if Fuquay has one, and Wake Forest has one, and Raleigh has one, and Rollsville has one, and Zebulon has one, and we're talking to a restaurant group and saying, hey, you should relocate to East Wake. We're investing in our downtown. We have this social district. You know, we're trying the things that are making businesses locate places that enhance the community character, as we said in the opening sort of purpose statement.
Okay. Amen. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Section 5, Public Hearings. 5A, public hearing for continuous annexation of a 1.03 acre parcel, PIN 17942493313, located at 4690 Wendell Boulevard. Mr. Coates.
Yep, the first public hearing tonight is annexation request, as you mentioned, A2208. Consider a motion to adopt the attached ordinance. The property owner, Francis Parham, has submitted an annexation request for the 1.03 acre parcel located at 406090 Wendell Boulevard. The applicant is currently connected to municipal water, but not municipal sewer, and they would like to be able to connect to sewer for the existing on-site daycare, and that requires annexation. Parcel is not, there's no rezoning attached to it. They're just proposing to connect to sewer and have that service available. The proposed annexation would require services from the town's police, public works, and parks and rec departments if annexed and developed. Secondary services impacts will be incurred by other town departments. Water and sewer is readily available at the parcel and provided by our service agreement with the City of Raleigh Utilities. The existing daycare is there. There is always potential for an expansion on municipal water and sewer. Currently, if you have a septic, you have to have the septic area and then a repair area, and that limits what you can do on a site. At this time, there are no plans or permits submitted to expand the daycare, but I think that's an option moving forward with the connection to municipal sewer. I can field any questions that you have, if you have any at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Coates? No. Okay. Just open the public hearing now?
Yep.
Okay. Open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak for? I'll take this first. Or against? Okay. This is not track, is it, here? It's the first time, don't, okay. All right, see nobody, I'll close the public hearing. Board?
Happy to make a motion when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Make a motion to approve contiguous annexation of 1.03 acres, parcel PIN number 17942493313, located at 4690 Wendell Boulevard.
We have a motion to approve. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moved on to item 5B, is a request to annex and rezone approximately 458.73 acres located at 2309 North Carolina 97 Highway, 1412 Marshburn Road, 1832 Peach Grove Lane, 2103 Peach Grove Lane, and 2040 Peach Grove Lane from Wake County Residential 40 to Town of Wendell Planned Unit Development, PUD 22-02, to create a residential planned unit development. Mr. Coates.
Yep. Good evening, Commissioners. We're asking you to hold the public hearing on the proposed annexation and rezoning request and consider making a motion to adopt the attached ordinance. Plan unit developments consist of at least two components: a rezoning, which is heard both by the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners, and then a special use permit, which is quasi-judicial hearing before the Board of Commissioners. In this case, an annexation of the Town of Wendell corporate limits is also required. So this first public hearing is for the annexation and rezoning. The second public hearing that is scheduled is for the special use permit, which actually applies the regulations of the PUD to the rezoning. So just to be clear, in the PUD document, section L, pages 15 through 18, contains the applicant's response to the special use permit set out in the Town of Wendell UDO. The accompanying ordinance for the annexation and zoning map amendment states that these two items are only valid if the special use permit is granted to establish the standards for the PUD, which clarifies that if a motion is made to adopt the rezoning and annexation, and then the special use permit for a reason is denied, the annexation and rezoning would not be valid. I'm going to go through my PowerPoint proposal. As you said, is for roughly 458 acres along NC 97 that would create up to 1,833 housing units at a density of not more than 4 units per acre. Of the 1,833 units, at least 52% will be single-family detached, while single-family attached, such as duplex, triplex, townhome, will account for no more than 30%, and multifamily will account for no more than 30%. The applicant does state that the combined total of single-family attached and multifamily shall not exceed 880 units. It's also key to note, if a product is single-family for rent, in the Town of Wendell's UDO definition, that is considered multifamily when there's more than 2 units on a single parcel. The applicant is proposing that the residential properties will be governed by a homeowners association, which will abide by, maintain, and enforce the restrictive covenants. The PUD document included as attachment C has exhibits related to the proposed PUD. If approved, the applicant would need to submit preliminary plans for staff review moving forward. Locations, NC 97 near Marshburn Road. You can see the addresses. We'll have some maps up here in just a second. Current zoning is Wake County Residential 40. It is in our urban service area and is eligible for annexation based on that it's within 3 miles of our corporate core. The requested zoning, as we mentioned, is planned unit development. The corporate limits annexation was submitted and is part of this. Current land use is mostly woodlands. Proposed land use is a residential subdivision. You can see the property owners listed, and the applicant is BCUS Acquisitions, LLC. Project setting, the parcels there are highlighted in that bright orange. Parcels around it, you can see there's a mix of different residential zonings with either Wake County, Town of Wendell, or Town of Zebulon. To the east, you'll see that bright blue, that's a planned development. That is in the Town of Zebulon. It includes a mix of single-family and townhomes that have been approved by their town board. Properties to the south, still mostly Wake County zoning, but in between the Ammons property and our city limits are a few parcels. And then to the west, you'll see some parcels that are labeled R40. Those are actually in for review for a residential subdivision that would connect to this Ammon site and be a Town of Wendell residential. As I mentioned, the Town of Zebulon has approved some subdivisions east of the proposed Ammon that do not contain any stubs to allow for connectivity across Little River. So those existing subdivisions in Zebulon that you see to the east, there is no bridge needed to connect to them. There are the stubs and the cul-de-sacs end at Little River, so there's no connectivity. And as I mentioned, the planned development by the Town of Zebulon has been approved for 418 attached and detached single-family housing units and contain a mix. So as you see here is a map of the zones, which is a requirement for planned unit development. It's very similar to Wendell Falls PUD, has zones identified where certain types of development can occur. We'll go over each of these here in a moment. You can see there's Zone 1, Zone 1 Flex, and Zone 2. Zone 2 is all open space. And then Zones 1 and Zone 1 Flex will also have open space incorporated into the development pattern. So I'll just go over this. PUD zoning is such that proposes unique zoning districts, lot sizes, setbacks, and other requirements. This document will become the zoning document for this assemblage of properties. The intent of a PUD district is to allow for larger developments with integrated plans that may include all or some of the following types of uses: single family, multifamily, commercial, recreation, civic, and industrial. The Ammons PUD proposal has 3 zones. Zone 1 is residential, could include any of the following: conventional, detached, or attached single-family and age-restricted products. Zone 1 Flex could include single-family residential, multifamily, which includes single-family for rent, apartments, or condominiums. Zone 2 is open space and recreation, will include some passive open space, park space, and common area as well. The applicant's proposing 9 different housing types, which are shown in the chart attached. It's page 6 of the PUD, and they range from a 16-foot wide townhome lot to a 70-foot wide single-family home lot. So there's a variety of lot sizes with homes and different setbacks. While setbacks may vary for each housing type, in all instances where there is a driveway or garage, the setback is 20 feet to ensure that residents can park within their driveways. The applicant has provided zoning conditions. We're not going to go over every single zoning condition that's in the document. I'm going to go over some highlights for you. So for single-family detached, there's a 12-inch minimum foundation, except for age-targeted or live-work units with a masonry finish on street-facing sides. No single-family front facade or primary color can be duplicated for 3 lots directly across the street or diagonally across the street. No vinyl siding. Minimum of 1 window or door on all side elevations on upper and lower levels, except 0 lot lines, which the side is with the reduced setback. Garage doors will have windows or carriage-style hardware. Garages that extend beyond the front of the house will incorporate a trellis, an eyebrow roof, column projection, or other architectural elements. And all homes must have a minimum 6-foot deep porch covered or landing, which is uncovered. Townhomes, again, no vinyl siding. Front facades shall utilize masonry, brick veneer, or shake elements on 50% of the units in each building. Each building shall have a staggered break of at least 2 feet, and that's key when you look down a street. To have that break is really important to the streetscape, and it's not like you're looking at one continuous wall for townhomes. And so that 2-foot break, we see that a lot in zoning conditions. All end units shall have a window on the side elevation, and buildings must incorporate at least 3 of the following items on the primary elevations, whether it be dormers, gables, recessed entries, covered porch or stoop, cupolas or towers, pillars, minimum 10-inch eaves, offset in building face or roof, window trim, bay windows, balconies, or decorative patterns, which is similar to, some of these conditions are similar to what we're seeing in other developments as well. Apartments and condominiums, minimum 30% of front elevations and 15% of side and rear shall provide doors, porches, balconies, or windows. Front entrances can be at grade. Buildings must incorporate, again, 3 of those following primary elevations. Rooftop equipment to be completely screened from view, so the AC units or other equipment on the roof of an apartment or condominium building would be screened. And then the max height is 5 stories for those buildings. The applicant will need to obtain stormwater, sedimentation, erosion control permits from Wake County Environmental Services before any site work can commence. The proposed development plan will need to meet the requirements of the Town of Wendell UDO. It's key to note Wake County provides stormwater, sedimentation, and erosion control services for the Town of Wendell. Next section, buffers. There'll be a 20-foot Type B perimeter buffer as required since the use is more intense than the land around it. A Type B buffer is a medium density screening which is intended to create a visual separation between uses in zoning districts. The minimum plantings are 1 tree per 25 feet, 1 shrub every 6. The existing vegetation can be used to fulfill the buffer requirements with supplemental plantings as needed. Give me 1 second. UDO Section 7.5 requires different open space calculations per the type of unit. Knowing there's some flexibility in unit type, there could be certainly more single-family than what is in this calculation, which would increase open space. But currently, just assuming, 953 single-family and then the roughly split between townhomes and multifamily, there's a minimum requirement, would require 53.44 acres of open space. This development's proposing approximately 120 acres of open space, and roughly 83 acres of that is in the special flood hazard area. When specific plans come in, that's when staff will determine, because the single-family count could go up, and the townhome and multifamily unit count go down. So there's some adjustments that will be made when submittals come in for the project. The project has committed to the following amenities: private pool and clubhouse, minimum of 2 playgrounds, 1 on each side of the minor thoroughfare, pocket parks, public 10-foot multi-use path, and a dedication of 2.5 miles of public greenway, and a minimum 5-acre public park, of which 2 acres would be outside of the floodplain to the town of Wendell, and a dog park. A defined location for the public park dedication has not been determined at this time. The development is proposing a greenway running north-south along Little River and a greenway running east-west along Falls Branch in compliance with the town's Parks and Rec plan. You can see here in the Parks and Rec plan that they call it the Marshburn Road Greenway, which falls along Falls Branch. And then you can see the park designation here in that circle. This map highlights the minor thoroughfare. It's a 3-lane undivided roadway in compliance with the transportation plan, which would stub to properties to the south. In the long-term transportation plan, between the Ammons site and Old Zebulon Road, there would be an additional major thoroughfare that would run east-west, connecting Marshburn, Old Zebulon with Wendell Boulevard, kind of right before Wendell Middle School. So the transportation network, this is serving that function down, and then there's the proposed collector, which is a 67-foot right-of-way to connect to some properties, which is under review for Marshburn Manor residential subdivision. And so the plans are in compliance with our transportation plan. There is no way to connect across over to this Zebulon area for a roadway. Streams and wetlands. Environmental survey requires that all streams, wetlands, floodplains, and other features be shown on preliminary plans. A PUD document is not, this PUD document is not preliminary. They would need to show those if approved at the next phase for TRC review. Exhibit A does show general locations for ponds and environmentally sensitive areas. However, those areas will be delineated further during the preliminary plan process. Water and sewer service would be provided to the site via the town's agreement with Raleigh Water. The applicant is working with Raleigh Utilities on infrastructure. Raleigh Water would need to approve all infrastructure to extend service to the Ammon site, which may include gravity outfalls, pump stations, force mains, and water and sewer lines. Phasing, the applicant is anticipating a 7-year build-out schedule. They expect home construction to start in 2025 and continue through 2031. I'm going to take some water because this TIA is going to take a few minutes. TIA was required by the town of Wendell and NCDOT for this development plan. Anytime there's a project that creates more than 100 peak hour trips per day, a TIA is required. The applicant prepared a phased TIA for the proposed development for up to 1,700 units. If the development exceeds 1,700 unit threshold, an amended TIA would be required. Improvements listed in the TIA are phased according to the project's build-out schedule. Listed improvements include, in Phase 1, and we have a map we'll go to just next, full access drive with a 300-foot left turn lane at the site exit onto NC 97, a westbound 250-foot left turn lane into the site from NC 97, a 100-foot eastbound right turn lane into the site from NC 97, a 450-foot westbound right turn lane from NC 97 onto Lizard Lick Road, a 150-foot northbound left turn lane, and a 100-foot right turn lane from Marshburn Road onto NC 97. and a 400-foot eastbound left turn lane from Lizard Lick onto NC 97. Phase 2, you can see, is a mix of other improvements. A second eastbound turn lane from Lizard Lick onto 97 would be is part of the plan. A 350-foot eastbound through lane and right turn lane at the signalized intersection of NC 97 and Marshburn. A 100-foot northbound right turn lane at Site Drive 2, Marshburn Road. A 100-foot left turn lane onto southbound Marshburn Road at Site Drive 2. A 350-foot eastbound left turn lane from Wendell Boulevard onto NC 97 near SPC with a 1,200-foot additional lane for merging. Interchange of I-87 and Lizard Lick, the eastbound exit ramp onto Lizard Lick will become a free-flow channelized lane similar to the one at Wendell Falls with a 1,200-foot merge allowance. The westbound off-ramp of I-87 and Lizard Lick has a roundabout identified, while the eastbound contains a recommendation for monitor for signalization. Phase 3 of the improvements, Lizard Lick Road southbound will have a 100-foot right turn lane onto westbound I-87 and a 25-foot left turn lane onto eastbound I-87. Signal warrant analysis for the US 264 or I-87 eastbound ramp and Lizard Lick interchange will be completed ahead of time of the approval of the plat that contains the 597th dwelling unit. Signal warrant analysis for Site Drive 1 and NC 97 shall be completed ahead of the approval of the plat for the 1,564th unit. And that was all determined in the phasing plan and is part of a zoning condition. You can see here the interchange with I-87, 264. This is the intersection where SPC Mechanical at 97 and Wendell Boulevard. Site Drive 2, which would be available if the Marshburn Manor project moves forward as well. And Site Drive 1 would be their access for the development. And you can see the different road improvements by color. For blue is Phase 1. The fuchsia is Phase 1 to Phase 2. And then the red is for Phase 3. And it's key to note that their consultant for the TIA is here as well if you have specific questions. Transportation, local streets. The project will have access onto 97 and will include a 3-lane undivided minor thoroughfare and a 2-lane undivided minor collector. A 3-lane undivided minor thoroughfare is a 79-foot right-of-way with 3 12-foot travel lanes, 2 5-foot bike lanes, and 2 7-foot planting strips for street trees, as well as some sidewalks. The applicant is proposing a 10-foot multi-use path in lieu of a 6-foot sidewalk on one side of that 3-lane divided or undivided roadway. Staff does expect the design of the 3-lane undivided roadway to include a landscape median when the 3rd lane is not required or needed, so that the design could focus better on pedestrian safety and appropriate crossings. A 3-lane roadway with no breaks in it's very challenging for pedestrians, so we as staff want to encourage a thoughtful design of any roadways for pedestrian crossings, bike usage, and just making sure it's designed safely. The minor collector is a 2-lane roadway, contains a 67-foot right-of-way with travel lanes, bike lanes, and planting strips. For reference, a minor collector that's 67-foot wide is similar to Taylor Road or Big Falls in Wendell Falls, and also some of our other newer developments are installing that, like Bell Grove and other places. The local streets contain a 52-foot right-of-way with 2 travel lanes, 2 7-foot planting strips for street trees, and 2 5-foot sidewalks. One thing is key to note, I know it's been a question as of late, currently Wendell Falls PUD allows street trees it's in a street tree easement in front yards. In this case, the street trees will be in our right-of-way, and so there will be clear definition of where the trees are located and whose responsibility. Transportation, the applicant is also proposing a connectivity index of 1.4, which is consistent with projects in multiple of our zoning districts. 800-foot maximum block length with a 600-foot average block length is proposed, which is consistent with zoning districts R4 and up. A cul-de-sac maximum of 600 feet is proposed, which is consistent with other zoning districts as well. The applicant is proposing a minimum driveway distance of 100 feet on collector and minor thoroughfares. The UDO distance requirement is 150, so they are asking for a variation to bring that down to 100 feet. You can see here are some of the street details. It's our local street, 52-foot right-of-way. Comprehensive plan, Blueprint Wendell does classify this area as medium residential living 1. It's key to note that at the intersection of 97 and Marshburn contains a 50-acre area designated as activity center and a 75-acre area designated as industrial manufacturing and innovation. So I think one of the questions I know that was in, I think, some of the community meeting was, where will the commercial or commercial areas be to serve these households? And so the intersection of Marshburn and 97 is that focus area for us, whether it's commercial or industrial or innovation, which are all west of the Ammons PUD, and in the future will provide a variety of non-residential uses to serve this area. Comprehensive plan, the area immediately to the north of NC 97 is in Wake County's jurisdiction, is classified as water supply watershed, as the area drains into the old town of Wendell, or town of Zebulon water plant. The proposed Little River Reservoir is north of I-87, and the water supply watershed is north of the interstate and is potential drinking water for a water supply reservoir for Raleigh Water. This project is clearly south, and all of the streams drain south of that future dam. Proposed project meets the characteristics outlined in medium residential 1 as a place type. The project is comprised of residential units with a density of no more than 4 units per acre. MR1 contains language that new residential units be single-family detached. The applicant is proposing a mix of single-family detached, single-family attached, and multifamily. Staff feels the mix of unit type within a PUD is reasonable for a development of this size and contains conditions related to materials and design to address the appearance. Mix of housing type, as you can see from their proposal, it's a wide range in lot size, it's a wide range in unit type. It is key to note accessory dwelling units are allowed. Improved open space in the form of pocket parks and neighborhood. The proposed subdivisions dedicate an area for a public park of at least 5 acres and will have approximately 120 acres of open space as well as 2.5 miles of greenway trail. And as the comprehensive plan does ask for greenway trails with links to trails and walkways and neighboring development. The proposed subdivision adding Little River corridor, that north-south, there's only a few properties between this Ammons area and land that the town of Wendell and Zebulon own nearby for future greenway extensions. Development south of Wendell Boulevard has included a greenway easement in their plans. And then the east-west connection along Fall Branch, if development occurs along Marshburn Road, there will be key connections with that greenway from this project. Statement of plan consistency and reasonableness. Any recommended change to the zoning map shall be accompanied by a statement explaining how the change is and is not consistent with the comp plan and is not reasonable in nature. The proposed development conditional district are consistent with the medium residential living category 1. The density falls within that range of 2 to 4 units. Lot sizes within the development do meet the intent for new development of both small lot and medium lot detached homes. The applicant's proposing 9 different lot sizes, ranging from, as I mentioned earlier, a minimum 16-foot wide townhome to a 70-foot wide single family. Development also incorporates trails throughout the neighborhood, which is consistent with the open space types within that classification. And the plan is consistent for the following reasons: neighborhood and housing, diversify housing to appeal to different age groups, income, lifestyle preference, and family situation. They have mentioned having units for over 55, single family for rent, just single family on a lot, larger lots to townhomes, so a mix of housing type. Green space and greenway goal 1, increase public access to outdoors, open space, and nature, including through the existing expansion of Wendell's rec system. The donation of a minimum 5-acre park site would certainly provide access. Also, the greenway connections also provide a lot of key recreation outdoors that, you know, we keep hearing from people they want more greenways. And then as Greenway Space and Greenway Goal 2 expand Park Greenway Trail Network by developing new facilities and connecting to existing ones, this certainly creates new greenways for us. And then also has secondary parallel greenway routes to protect green space along Marks Creek and Little River. This one is certainly along Little River, as it provides the boundary of the eastern part of the property. Planning Board action at their September 19th, 2022 meeting. Planning Board voted 7-0 in favor to recommend approval of the rezoning request with the following conditions, which have been incorporated into the PUD document. One was to construct the Fall Branch as shown in Exhibit A2. The precise location will be later determined as part of the permitting process. The original proposed 10-foot multi-use path shown as connecting to the proposed Marshburn Manor project will instead be constructed as a 6-foot sidewalk. Condition 2, the proposed 5-acre minimum public park to be dedicated to the town of Wendell shall be located along the Little River Greenway and shall contain at least 2 acres of land outside of the floodplain sufficient for a usable neighborhood park. Condition 3, there will be a minimum of 1 playground on each side of the 3-lane undivided minor thoroughfare that runs north-south through the PUD. And then the signal warrant analysis information that you see was already incorporated in the phasing study. TRC, once preliminary plans are submitted, they'll be forwarded to TRC for review and comment. The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting on August 4th, which 20 people were roughly in attendance. Attachment C in your packet is the minutes from that meeting. Staff's recommendation is that the proposed development plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Blueprint Wendell 2030 is considered reasonable since it fulfills the goals of the comprehensive plan noted above, and therefore staff recommends approval of the annexation and rezoning. And I can field any questions you have at this time. The applicant does have a PowerPoint as well.
Any questions from the board at this time? At this time, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Do you want to hear from the applicant's PowerPoint first, or do you want to just open it up? It's up to you.
Yeah, I was just going to open up as part of the public hearing.
Okay.
So what do I push, just the mouse?
Yeah, just the little arrows.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, town staff, and town attorney. My name is Nick Robinson, and I practice law with Bradshaw, Robinson, Slaughter, and Rayner in Pittsboro, 128 Hillsborough Street, Pittsboro, North Carolina, 27312. I am delighted to be here tonight on behalf of the applicant, which is BC US Acquisitions LLC, which is a rather generic name for an entity that represents actually the good folks that are on the development team for Wendell Falls, and who are here present tonight to meet with you. So Tanya Matson is here, and Chris Ferragudo from the development team is here, as well as Katie Myers. They're all with the Wendell Falls team, and then Chris Seamster is here, and with McKim & Creed, and Josh Renke, who's the traffic engineer from Ramey Kemp, and also Hunter Howell of Val Ridge Properties. And some of them we have set up to testify as expert witnesses in the second hearing having to do with the special use permit, and others will run through during this legislative part of the hearing. I do want to start, though, by thanking the town staff for the incredible amount of effort and assistance in reviewing and finalizing the project as it's now going to be presented to you. I'm losing track, but I believe the PUD document that you'll hear more about in the second hearing but in parallel with this request is on version number 29. And we got to version number 29 by working closely with the staff. A lot of the stuff that Mr. Coates just mentioned to you, all the amenities and everything, we really worked together with them hand in hand through those 29 drafts to get the project to the point where it's received the affirmative recommendation from the staff for the rezoning. And by further way of introduction, I've been working with the Wendell Falls team since 2014, playing a small role in helping to bring that project to life over the years. The main credit goes to the folks who are actually doing the work. But an important element of Wendell Falls with which I was directly involved was the amendment of the town UDO back in 2015 that created this new zoning district that hadn't been included in the UDO, which is a zoning district for planned unit developments, or PUDs. And working together with the staff, the UDO was amended back then in 2015 to create a special zoning district for projects that are more than 200 acres, which is an excellent thing for you to have in the town because it provides the mechanism by which larger projects can be developed on larger tracts, but you still preserve a huge amount of open space and natural area while creating a vibrant community. And the PUD district is what allows you to do that. And Wendell Falls is a PUD. So I think this is true. To my knowledge, Wendell Falls is the only approved PUD in the town. There's no other land that's specifically zoned as a PUD district. So any project that seeks to be a PUD classification has to apply for this zoning map amendment, which is what we're asking you for right now, to allow for the PUD project to be approved. Let's see here. There we go. So on the screen is something that you've already seen, and I'm going to try to cut my presentation down as much as I can based on what Brian just presented so that it won't be repetitive. But you see the 458 plus or minus acres that are owned by the Ammons family with frontage on NC Highway 97. That's the whole assemblage for the project there. Current zoning is R40, as Brian mentioned. We're requesting to rezone it to a PUD. And he also mentioned this as well, but just to be clear, there's 3 steps. First step is to approve a zoning map amendment, which we're asking for right now. Second is to approve annexation, we're also asking for that right now. And the third is to approve a special use permit for the planned unit development, which would be in the second hearing, the quasi-judicial hearing. Yeah, and so I think that's covered in number 4 as well. So for our hearing tonight, this first part, you're hearing the sort of legal preview from me now. I'll turn it over to Tanya Matson for an introduction from the Brookfield team about the vision for the project. And then I'll turn it over to Chris Seamster, who did the land plan for the project, and then I'll do a conclusion. I do want to just highlight at the beginning of the legislative part of the hearing what the legal standards are for review and approval. Section 1.2 of your UDO sets forth the development intent under the UDO, which is to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare, and to promote desirable living conditions and the sustained stability of neighborhoods, to protect property against blight and depreciation, and to conserve environmental resources. We meet all of those. And then the North Carolina General Statute 160D 605A, as Brian pointed out, requires that a rezoning of map amendment such as this is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, which it is. And 605B requires a finding that, and a statement that the proposed amendment is reasonable under the circumstances. I won't go through this whole list here, but it's available in the materials that we submitted. But these are other ways in which this proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with your Wendell Blueprint 2030 goals, because I think Brian did a great job of walking you through that already. Happy to go back to it if you'd like to, though. And then I would present, with regard to the second prong of it being reasonable, there are factors that are mentioned in the statute that requires a finding of reasonableness. The first one is that the size of the tract allows for both promotion of high quality and a variety of housing conditions, but also for preservation and maintenance of natural open space, conservation areas, and greenways and parks. Second reason why it's reasonable is it'll create significant benefits to the town and its residents by actualizing the goal of public access to nature, connecting wildlife corridors and protecting natural resources like the Little River Corridor and then also the Falls Branch Corridor. Third is that it's, with appropriate buffers and interconnectivity, the map amendment seamlessly integrates the new zoned area with the surrounding current and future potential uses nearby. And then as described above, it promotes the public interest. So that's the introduction. That's sort of the legal backdrop for this next part of the legislative public hearing. I'd like to ask Tanya Matson to come up and present to you about the vision and goals of the developer in the process. Thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Ammons project to you tonight. My name's Tanya Matson. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Brookfield here in the Raleigh market. As the slide shows, we were formerly Newland, and in 2021 we joined the Brookfield family. While the name has changed, we're still the same award-winning team, and on this slide you'll see some of those awards. Developer of the Year, Best Land Plan, America's 100 Best Places to Live, as Wendell Falls was named. Best Landscape Design. We use a multidisciplinary team that is assembled with each of our projects, and we look at every aspect of life in a community in a master plan to design each very uniquely. The arrow? The right arrow? There we go. So here's Brookfield Properties' mission statement. We create exceptional places and experiences where people connect, are inspired, and thrive. And then some of our core values being vision, commitment, innovation, and quality. Like I said, at the heart of what we do, we look at what a community looks like, but what it feels like to live in it, to visit it, to navigate it. Vision, a long-term vision is what sets us apart and why we're seeking the PUD designation tonight. Our build-out for this project is 8+ years. We look at the uniqueness of the land and this property being very unique with a lot of natural environmental conditions that we want to preserve, the nuance of each market and evolving customer preferences. Commitment, our experienced teams, we integrate ourselves into the communities to understand the needs and ensure our projects benefit everyone, positioning our projects for success. Innovation, we bring together the best aspects of community design and amenity design to create developments where people truly want to be. And that's important in the multi-plan arena because we provide every segment. So, you have your first time move up and then you have your move up, your retirees, but we have multi-generational. So oftentimes people will buy their second and third homes within our communities. And then quality being dear to our projects and our company, holding our projects to high standards to ensure we enhance quality of life throughout a community's life cycle. So here are some precedent images of amenities that actually exist in Wendell Falls. I'm not going to list them all here, but we do take a lot of pride in planning distinct and unique community gathering spaces. You can see some of these here with our the Grove Park with our CrossFit fitness equipment there, dog park. We have a hammock park that's widely used and concrete cornhole boards in our Shindig Park. The proposed amenities in the Ammons project, as Brian went over, are listed here as well, and the public benefit of having, oh, that's incorrect. So we started out, like Nick said, we're on version 29. We started out with 1.5 miles of public greenway, and we are actually at 3.5 now. I know Brian was quoting 2.5, but we did add that southern string, so we are now at 3.5 of public greenway and dedicating a 5-acre site to a park site to the town of Wendell. Here are some images of our streetscapes in Wendell Falls, so indicative of some of the products you would likely see in this project. And then some of our resident testimonials. Like I said, we sort of attract the gamut of buyers from your startup, different lifestyle preferences, all the way up to retirees. So I'll read a couple of these. We love the family-friendly amenities. The community has been such a great environment for us. There's so much open space for our kids to play and amenities for the families to enjoy. We hear that one consistently because we're very thoughtful in our approach to our amenity offering. The dedication to the preservation of the natural areas provides for a great way to enjoy the ride home every evening. And I'm sure a lot of you experienced that beautiful drive into Wendell Falls. Some of the things that really stood out to us were the amenities, the green space, the layout of the homes, and just being part of a community that's growing. And that's also critical to what we do because we create neighborhoods that are walkable, that have a diverse mix of housing. We offer recreation and conveniences, but incorporate gathering spaces at a human scale to foster further social engagement and connections, because connections are ingrained in the fabric of what we do. We did engage a economic impact study from DPFG, Development Planning and Finance Group. So this table here demonstrates the annual projected build-out revenue to the town. So that is estimated at $4.462 million with a real property tax base of $573 million. Just going through several of these. The other revenues incorporate things like your beer and wine tax, utility franchise tax, and those types of things. This slide demonstrates the projected permanent ongoing economic impact of a project, of the Ammons project. So this one is showing that Ammons will generate total annual consumer spending of $243 million. This spending will support 1,991 total jobs and generate $103.5 million in annual labor income. Along the lines of the Blueprint 2030, this consumer spending is anticipated to help support and drive additional development in the area, as the intersection of NC 97 and Marshburn has been indicated as an activity center and sort of where all the commercial growth will happen there at that corner. All right, so I will turn it over to Chris Seamster with McKim & Creed to go over our land plan.
Good evening. I'm Chris Seamster with McKim & Creed, a regional manager in our Raleigh office. I've been involved with Wendell Falls as the engineer and land planning team since they bought the project in 2013, and then we really started in 2014. That was when they were Newland, and so we've been involved out there every step of the way since then. So I've dealt with the town quite a bit over the years. Before that, we were also working as the same team with Newland at another master plan community over in Chatham County called Briar Chapel, and we're still involved with that one too. So just to go over the land plan briefly, what I can do is just tell you some basics. I'll go over it more in depth during the special use permit if you'd like. Really, Brian kind of addressed most of the items there that you see on this map with the various, Zone 1 and the residential offering there, Zone 1 Flex that adds the opportunity for multifamily within that area, and the 120-acre area of the green zone, Zone 2. And this is the A2 exhibit that more details the open spaces throughout the project, including the areas within the floodplain, some of the on-site existing ponds that are there, some of the pocket park areas within the proposed neighborhood areas, the pocket park along Little River, as well as the trails, which you see in the black dashed line. That's the Greenway Trail running east-west and then along Little River on the far east side of the site, as well as the southern leg that runs east-west along Falls Branch as well. Both maps also showed the main transportation plan improvements, which was the minor thoroughfare and minor collector. And what it doesn't show is all the future local roads that will be as part of the residential subdivision aspects of it. And this is the typical section for the minor collector that meets all the town code standard details. And that's the 67-foot right-of-way. And also, I think we don't have shown, but we also have the minor thoroughfare road as well, the 79-foot right-of-way that Brian went over. So I'll be back shortly, and we can go over the plan in more details in a bit. Thanks.
Thank you, Tanya and Chris. So we're down to the very end of our presentation of this, and then you can hear from the public or ask any questions that you all might have. But I just wanted to conclude by saying that we think it's pretty clear, and the staff agrees that the application meets the map amendment requirements of the UDO and of the North Carolina general statutes, and it promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare, and it is also consistent with the comprehensive plan, Blueprint 2030, and helps to further the goals in it, and is reasonable, which is the scope of your inquiry for this first part. And as Brian pointed out, you can vote to approve the rezoning map amendment and the annexation, and it will be conditioned upon. It will go into effect conditioned upon whether or not you vote to approve the special use permit and the PUD thereafter. So really the focus of the conversation right now and for this first part of the hearings is really just whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and reasonable as a project. And I know there will be potential questions or want more information about some of the traffic issues and possibly about real estate values and all that. All of that will be brought up in specific detail in the SUP part of the hearing when I bring them in as expert witnesses with expert testimony with much higher level of detail with regard to that. So I'm just telling you that because that's really more germane to the special use permit part than it is to this legislative part. And so if there are any questions for me or our folks, we'll take them now, or otherwise we'll just sit down and listen.
Any questions from the board at this time?
Great, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Okay. We'll continue the public hearing. Heard from the applicant. All those who wish to speak in favor or against, go ahead. You come to the podium, state your name and address.
Hopefully I'll be a little lighter than everyone. My name is Barry Perry, a 62-year resident of Wendell, also a resident of Wendell Falls, and very pleased to work with this group of people that are here with us tonight. A very quick chronology. I remember as a child growing up in Wendell where I heard some of our earlier conversation that we're talking about special use districts and areas to enjoy alcohol downtown. Well, when I was a teenager, no one in Wendell sold alcohol. There was nowhere to buy it. And so I see that. I see our schools changing. I see the wonderful new shopping centers that we have, medical facilities, Wake Tech building. There are so many things that are untangible that these people bring to our community, and I'm so glad to have them here. As a teenager, I saw many of my friends that were talented, that went to local schools and universities, that when they got jobs, they left Wendell and went for greener pastures. And I'm so pleased now to see the next generation is all staying here. They're raising their family here, and they see the Wendell that I've grown up and I've loved for so many years. As a resident of Wendell Falls, I can just tell you that I've had several homes all in Wendell, from anywhere from a townhouse to an acre lot to 5-acre lot. But I'm glad that we have the choices that we do in Wendell. For many years, when I sat on the board where you're sitting currently now, all I heard from people was that we need larger homes, we need larger selections and stuff. And our builders were doing exactly what people needed. They did exactly what was asked for. And to know that I live in a community now that we have multi-million-dollar homes in our area with the amenities like the pools and the clubhouses, when I heard the Chamber of Commerce and Roger speak earlier. I was so pleased to hear it. I mean, I remember when we had 2,000 and 3,000 people at our local festivals, and I heard numbers upwards of 20,000 people this past weekend. I've just never seen so many people in Wendell. These are the things that Brookfield brings to Wendell. These are the things that I'm glad to be part of Wendell, and I'm glad that y'all are willing to take the time. I heard 29 revisions. If anyone is here that doesn't understand the time and the effort it takes for town staff to make 29 revisions in something, I think if you did that in purchasing a car or a home or something, they'd have left you a long time ago. But it's obviously a wonderful collaboration between the town officials, and everything that's going on there. And I'm just very pleased to see them expanding in Wendell, and I'm so happy to see the partnership that went so well at Wendell Falls that now they've decided to build additional communities in our area. And so with all that being said, I wanted to also wish you all Thanksgiving and happy Thanksgiving. And also I wanted to make sure that y'all know how much we appreciate you and the time you spend and the town staff and what they do as well. There's many things to be thankful in this community, and in my opinion, we're thankful to have Brookfield here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Okay. Is it appropriate to close it at this time here, or should I allow us some conversation first, or what would be the best plan of action?
The board can deliberate after you close.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nobody who would like to speak for or against, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And then, board, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just say that I really appreciate the presentation. I know that obviously a lot of what we talk about is development and growth, and it's for a reason. It's the biggest thing that's happening in Wendell right now. And I think it's notable that in most of the conversations that I have, people who have concerns about growth or concerns about where we're going, regardless of where folks are on that spectrum, I really just hear so many good things about Wendell Falls, and I think that y'all have done a great job there, and I'm excited about what's next, and just appreciate the work that's gone into it. I think we can always learn we're learning all the time and figuring out how to do things better and better, so I'm looking forward to this being even better than Wendell Falls, and so I just appreciate the presentation, and don't have any additional questions tonight.
Yeah, I'll just comment that, oftentimes we hear comments and public comment especially about growth and types of growth and size of growth and density of growth. And I think one common theme that we hear a lot of times is, I know that I've heard it before, I'm okay with Wendell Falls. Like, growth is one thing. If you can give me another Wendell Falls, sign me up. I'm in on that. So for this to literally be a Wendell Falls 2.0, let's call it, pretty much half the size, if you round it off, and 6 to 8 year project. This is not 1,800 homes being dumped on us in 6 months' time. This is a process. We see what Wendell Falls has brought to our community. And so, with the growth conversation, I think, again, a common theme that I've heard is I'm okay with Wendell Falls. So it'd be interesting to see how this is received. And that's just a comment I had. I have a couple minor questions, but if anybody wants to speak.
My questions are for the next time.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with things that have been said. I'm always a little hesitant to approve projects to come through when we know we don't know what's going on, but this is a project that we've seen before. And so if we know what's coming through, we know what's being presented, certainly I feel better about this type of project than I do some of the other ones too. So my only concern with tonight, and gentlemen, you can kind of guide me on this process, is missing 2 of our board members. I mean, we're talking about one of the biggest projects to come through the town. I don't have a lot of concern with it this time here, but, I think, in my opinion, it makes much more sense for us as a board to firmly make sure that we all have a ability to speak up, and even the mayor not being here tonight, so, I don't know how we need to proceed from this point, but I would like to go ahead and hear all the or hear all the, public hearings tonight, since I know that, people have come out and given their nights, and I don't want to, have them come back, but I would feel better if we at least elected to table the vote until next meeting we had a full board back. If that's,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and I think, town attorney probably just steer us on the best way for us to hear everybody that's here, to hear the presentation. How can we achieve that? 1,800 homes without the mayor and mayor pro tem, I think it's,
There are some procedural challenges in hearing a quasi-judicial case. You know, it'll be recorded, I guess the ones who are not here, because you've only got one voting member who's not here. But they could certainly review the video, review the minutes. So, yeah, you can proceed as you deem appropriate, but there are some potential complications in delaying a vote on a quasi-judicial matter.
okay.
is it appropriate to hear presentations, not necessarily, you know, I guess the special use permit?
I think,
I know that's a weird dance, but.
well, no, the special use permit requires certain due process and procedural steps. Sworn testimony is one of those. So we couldn't just have a presentation on the special use permit. We would need to have the evidentiary hearing as required by the statutes.
So as much as we'd like to not inconvenience folks and having to come back, that might be a necessary evil.
I think it creates more problems than it solves.
Okay. So then from tonight's standpoint, we either need to kind of open the can of worms or don't open it? I mean, is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I think that's a really good way to put it.
Okay. If we're okay proceeding, then I will make just a nod that we kind of go ahead and vote and keep moving in. I mean, I don't hear a lot of concerns from the board. I don't, all right. Then if we can get any more discussion, or we can go ahead and ready for a motion if somebody wants to make it.
Happy to make one.
Go ahead.
Let me make sure I find the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
Move that we approve the request to annex and rezone approximately 458 acres located at, do I need to say all these addresses?
You can make a motion to approve, if that's where you're going.
Yeah, I am.
Make a motion to approve the annexation and rezoning as set forth in item 5B,
Okay.
together with approve a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness.
Jim said it better than I'll be able to, and when I try to say it again, but I move that we approve the annexation and rezoning request as laid out in item 5B, along with the statement of plan consistency
And
and reasonableness.
We have a motion on the table. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to item 5C, this is an evidentiary hearing on special use permit requested by BCUS Acquisitions to create a residential, hold on a second, let me, we need to give, just a quick restroom break here, I'm sorry, before we proceed on. Why don't we take a quick 5-minute recess? Yeah, sorry, Phil.
Everybody stretch your legs.
Yes, okay, I'm just going to go on to the next one. Let's start back. Okay. All right, so let's go move on to item 5C, evidentiary hearing on special use permit requested by BCUS Acquisitions to create a residential plan unit development on 458.473 acres located at 2309 NC 97 Highway, 1412 Marshburn Road, 1832 Peach Grove Lane, 2103 Peach Grove Lane, and 2040 Peach Grove Lane. We'll let Brian Chris present. I'm going to hear from the attorney if you can lay out the guidelines just for this special hearing.
Yes, sir. These hearings are now referred to in the law as evidentiary hearings, and they require you to follow rules of procedure and rules of evidence. The testimony that will be presented to you has to be sworn under oath, and it has to be meet the same criteria that it would have to meet in a court of law, which is substantial, competent material evidence. Certain items require expert witness. They require credentials to present the evidence, just like it would in a court on items such as property valuations, stormwater, engineering issues, things of that nature. And then you sit as judges and see if the evidence satisfies the factual findings that are set forth in the UDO. And if they are, then the permit should be allowed, and if not, then the permit would not be allowed. But I'd be glad to try to answer any questions about that process, but it's a lot more judicial and a lot less quasi these days.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes, so,
Oh, do you want
Town
me to do the
clerk.
swearing in now?
Yep, town
Okay,
clerk's
let's go
gonna
into the
come up.
swearing in now. So anyone who's going to speak at all, or who thinks they might want to speak, now's your time.
So you all want to like gather around. Sounds good. I'll scooch. If you want to put your hand on the Bible, you can, if you don't have to. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to help you God?
I do.
Good evening, Commissioners. This next public hearing, as the town attorney mentioned, is evidentiary hearing for a special use permit requested by BCUS Acquisitions to create a residential plan unit development on 458 acres at the mentioned addresses. I also would like to enter our staff PowerPoint into the record for evidence. As we mentioned, it's 458 acres at those addresses. As the PUD is, as you just heard the rezoning, the special use permit enacts the PUD regulations. And section L of their PUD document addresses special use requirements which are set forth in the town of Wendell UDO. As we mentioned earlier, the proposal is 458 acres, up to 1,833 units, with a mix of units between single-family and multifamily and townhomes. PUD requirement sets forth the criteria, including housing type, dimensional requirements, design criteria for each type of dwelling unit, street sections, and more. The PUD document does include attachments as exhibits related to the proposed PUD. The applicant has provided all required information for a PUD zoning district as part of their application. And I guess we have gone through 29 revisions. It goes by quickly in planning world, but we made quite a few collaboration calls and feedback on those. So as a location, I won't go over these all in great detail, but it is in our urban service area. It's eligible for annexation and development. The surrounding properties to the east, as I mentioned earlier, have been annexed and part of town of Zebulon and are single-family and attached and detached units. Property to the west is under review for single-family development. And it's key to note, the properties to the south are between our current city limits and this Ammons project. Again, the zones which will dictate in the PUD what can get built in each of those sections. It is key to note in Zone 2 we allow civic buildings for that future park. So if town needs to build restrooms or a park facility, we can do that. And this is the breakout between those zones, as we mentioned earlier. Housing types, you can see Lot dimensions, setbacks, encroachments, and parking ratios are all included. And the zoning conditions, which are all part of the PUD document, very similar to Wendell Falls, which dictates materials, landscaping, and then zoning conditions such as foundation materials, no vinyl, things like that, that are all covered in that PUD document. Townhomes, similar, apartments and condos as well, set some design standards. Special use permit requirements, the applicant, as I said, has provided their responses to the special use permit general requirements set forth in section 1515B2 of the UDO and is included in section L of the PUD document. The utilities would be served with our agreement with Raleigh Water, so Raleigh would have to approve all the infrastructure for the project. Buffering does provide a 20-foot type B perimeter buffer as the use is more intense than the surrounding land. As we mentioned earlier, the type B buffer is a medium density, 1 tree per 25 feet, 1 shrub every 6, meets the UDO standards. Open space, the unit count can vary, so if there's more single family than what we've calculated, and they build less townhomes or less multifamily, the additional acreage would be required, depending on how much they're providing for the single family unit count. They are providing approximately 120 acres. Currently, roughly 83.75 are located within the special flood hazard area. The amenities include private pool, clubhouse, minimum of 2 playgrounds, pocket parks, multi-use path. The PUD does say that 2.5 miles is in the document, so if it's 3.5, we need to adjust that. I wasn't sure of the total calculation because there was an adjustment made on that. So that's one thing I would ask is that we amend the PUD document to state 3.5 miles of public greenway. Minimum 5-acre park dedicated to the town is included in there. As I said, we mentioned earlier, we don't have a location determined at this time, but it would be along that Little River Greenway. The open space, collector road, and thoroughfare road. Stormwater, as we mentioned, streets are in conformance with our plans, whether it be the minor thoroughfare, the collector, or the local streets, all meet our UDO regulations. The applicant is proposing a connectivity index of 1.4, which is similar to other zoning districts. Also, block length is similar to other zoning districts as well. Cul-de-sac length, they are asking that the driveway distance off of a collector or minor thoroughfare be 100 feet instead of 150. And so in that minor thoroughfare, the local streets coming off of that, instead of being a minimum 150 feet apart, they can be 100. So that's where they're asking for a little bit of leeway in that distance between those not driveways, but local streets that come off those collector or minor thoroughfares. You can see here's the typical road details. TIA, I'm not going to read all the improvements. It's in there. It's a phased TIA. A lot of time was spent on that with Town of Wendell, the developer, and DOT, as well as neighboring developments to get that phasing completed. As we mentioned, it's for 1,700 units. If they go over the 1,700, they'll have to amend that TIA to go to the full 1,833. Lots of road improvements, whether they be on 97, Lizard Lick, Marshburn Road, or even down at the intersection of Wendell Boulevard and NC 97, which is a few miles west of the site. It's broken out in phases. The signal warrant analysis, which will determine when certain intersections are signalized, is in the phasing plan and came up during planning board discussion as well. You can see the improvements here, color-coded. And then the special use criteria is that the proposed use does not affect adversely the general plans for the physical development of the town as embodied in this ordinance and any plan or portion thereof adopted by the board. The proposed use will not be contrary to the purposes stated for these regulations. The proposed use will not adversely affect the health and safety of residents and workers. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the use of development of adjacent parcels, they are providing stubs as required to neighboring parcels for future development. The proposed use will not be affected adversely by the existing uses. The proposed use will be placed on a lot of sufficient size to satisfy space requirements of the use. Proposed use will not constitute a nuisance or hazard because of the number of persons who will attend or use the facility. In this case, it's all residential. Standards set forth in each particular use project which a permit may be granted have been met. The board may impose or require such additional restrictions and conditions as may be necessary to protect health and safety and the value of the property in the general neighborhood. The proposed use shall be subject to the minimum area setback and other location requirements for the zoning district which it will be located, and the proposed use shall be subject to off-street parking and service requirements of these regulations. However, that an approved PUD plan document may include modifications of such requirements. As we mentioned earlier, the applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting August 4th, and then staff's recommendation, staff of Wendell, town planning staff do not make recommendations on special use permits. The plans that they have submitted meet the UDO, or they have their variations for the UDO, which are allowed in a PUD zoning district. We did run the legal ads for 2 consecutive weeks in the Wake Weekly. Notification was mailed to adjacent property owners October 31st, and the public hearing notice was placed October 31st as well. I can field any questions that you have.
Any questions? Okay. We'll turn to the applicant here this time.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Commissioners. Nick Robinson. Again, Bradshaw Robinson Slaughter and Rayner LLP, 128 Hillsborough Street, Pittsburgh, NC 27312. And again, I'm here on behalf of BCUS Acquisitions LLC, the applicant. And we're again delighted to be in front of you tonight to present our case with regard to the PUD and the special use permit for it. I think that you've seen this picture 4 times, so I don't think I need to spend more time on it. That's the general, that's the assemblage of the property. And Brian just read through the approval criteria for you, so I won't read through those again. I'll just say that in a lot of communities and jurisdictions where I practice, the list is only 5 findings long, but you have 11, which is leaves us a lot of territory to cover. But the one thing I want to say, as just in the way of a roadmap for the hearing tonight, is that Mr. Cawley did a great job of explaining that we've got quasi-judicial standards and we're putting in competent material and substantial evidence to support the finding of these 11 items. And I'll just lay out for you the order that we'll do the witnesses in and what they're going to discuss. And then that way, if you have particular questions about a particular subject, you'll know the right person to ask and maybe when to ask it. So we'll ask Tanya to come up again, Tanya Matson, and speak briefly about the project. Again, we'll have Chris Seamster come up to speak in a little bit more detail about the land plan for the project. And then Josh Ranke is here from Ramey Kemp, who will discuss the traffic engineering issues for you. He'll be third. And fourth will be Hunter Howell, who is a real estate appraiser. We'll talk about real property impacts. And so as you listen to their testimony, I would only ask that you focus on those approval criteria and how we've satisfied our burden of evidence with experienced professionals in their respective fields. And I don't think anybody else besides our witnesses was sworn to testify tonight, but I usually do just say that in order to kind of preserve the flow of this judicial or quasi-judicial hearing, I just make a general objection at the beginning here to any opponent testimony that lacks standing or is hearsay or is incompetent or immaterial in some way or another. That way I don't have to stand up and object. So with that groundwork, you've seen some of the conceptual drawings, and this is images of what you already have in Wendell Falls that would be similar for the Ammons project. So I'd like to go ahead, and if I can, go ahead and call the first witness, which is Tanya Matson up here to cover just a few more things. I'm going to stay up here with you just a little bit longer to get you through a few things. So if you can just introduce yourself.
Tanya Matson. Office address is 4020 West Chase Boulevard, Suite 150 in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Brookfield Properties Development, and the company representative for BCUS Acquisitions.
And so can you just tell the board a little bit about your experience, your level of experience with a project like this?
Sure. I've been a licensed real estate broker in the state of North Carolina for the past 17 years. I've been employed with Brookfield Properties and its predecessor since 2014.
Okay. And so you're now under oath, but you weren't in the prior hearing. So do you adopt your prior unsworn testimony offered during that immediately prior legislative hearing as part of your sworn testimony for this hearing?
I do.
And you stand behind that?
I do.
Okay, very good. That way you don't have to repeat everything again, if that's okay with the board. Okay, then I will leave you to it.
Okay.
You just,
So you've seen these slides, both on the economic impact, permanent ongoing impact, and I think the point again here is that, the anticipated spending in this area will help support additional development, as this has been identified as a growth corridor in the 2030 blueprint. Do I have another slide? Oh, that's Chris.
Yeah, that's really it.
I did want to say something on this point, though. I do believe this is a project the town of Wendell can be proud of. I've heard this referenced as Wendell Falls 2.0, and we sort of reference it the same way internally. Numerous benefits, from the economic impact, but also from an extension of infrastructure on the eastern side of town. I know that's been important to the town. And then the just quality of life for the residents. I think offering 3.5 miles of public greenway is pretty substantial for a project, and dedication of a 5-acre park. So we are happy to partner with the town of Wendell in offering these amenities to its residents, to its larger constituents in the town of Wendell, and then providing that opportunity to create continual greenway access, north and south and east and west. So we do strive to preserve unique environmental characteristics, and we have a commitment to sustainable development, and so that's one of our core tenets as well. I know the Little River Greenway, protecting that space has been important for the town, and we intend to do the same. So I do think this is a project that everyone can be proud of at the end of the day.
That's really it for Ms. Matson, unless one of you have questions for her. Okay. All right, then with that, I would call up Chris Seamster as the second witness. And Chris is going to be talk to you a little bit about his qualifications for purposes of the quasi-judicial hearing. And once he's done that, I'd like to tender him to the board as an expert. So I'll stay up here in the way just for a little bit longer.
That works. Good evening again. Chris Seamster. Whoops, I went backwards. There we go. I'm Chris Seamster with McKim & Creed. Office address is 1730 Varsity Drive in Raleigh, 27606. I'm the regional manager of the land development group with McKim & Creed. I've got a BLA, that's a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from Virginia Tech. Licensed landscape architect in North Carolina, number 982, with, 27 years experience. It adds up. 21 years with McKim & Creed. I've worked in Wendell, with Wendell too, on various projects over the years, and extensively since 2014 as the lead site engineer and land planner for Wendell Falls. My role on this project, on the Ammons project, is overseeing the layout and site design and site plans, and working with town staff to ensure compliance with town standards.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to tender Chris Seamster as an expert in the field of site and land development, land planning, and site design. Thank you.
All right, you see the zone map, Exhibit A1 is on your screen again. Like we've talked about, it's gone through several rounds of review with planning staff, a number of rounds, actually. We've worked with staff to refine plans and ensure they conform with the applicable PUD development standards. We also incorporated several changes based on comments and concerns we heard from the planning board. I'll provide some high-level details, but can also answer any questions you may have. As Brian mentioned, the project proposes a maximum of 1,833 residential units divided between single-family detached, townhomes, and multifamily. The overall density is 4 units per acre, which is consistent with the Wendell Blueprint 2030, the goals and visions. We're trying to develop the Ammons project with a similar approach as we've done with Wendell Falls, with a diverse housing offering and improved open spaces interspersed throughout the community. You can see in the plan, Wendell's transportation plan requirements incorporated, and that's the north-south minor thoroughfare, which is the blue dash line, starting up at 97 and stubbing to the south. As the detail showed, it's 79-foot right-of-way with 36 foot for 3 lanes, 5-foot bike lanes on both sides, a 6-foot sidewalk on both sides, and we have shown, I'll point this out on the open space map too, we've got a multi-use trail along the roadway down to about halfway through the site till it can connect up with the greenway. The red dash line you see is the east-west collector that stubs to the properties off of Marshburn Road. That ultimately will be another project, and it'll take it out to Marshburn. That's 67-foot right-of-way with 24-foot for 2 lanes, 5-foot bike lanes on both sides, and 6-foot sidewalks on both sides. As detailed in the PUD, the rest of the roads within the development will be typical 52-foot right-of-way local roads with 5-foot sidewalks on both sides, and any of the rear load product similar to what you see with some of the smaller lots at Wendell Falls. They'll have a 20-foot private alley in the rear. The colors we talked about are the different development zones. Zone 1, the yellow, that covers most of the site outside of the open space. It permits a wide range of housing types. That includes conventional detached housing, attached single-family, and age-restricted products. The part of the site that's called Zone 1 Flex with the red crosshatch, that's on the western half of the project. This is residential flex zone. It's also in the northwest quadrant up against 97 and in the southwest area. That area allows for conventional detached housing, attached single-family, and multifamily residential. The green zone is open space and recreation areas and greenways, and what you may have a hard time seeing is right along the perimeter, there's a 20-foot buffer shown around the perimeter of the site that's not already in stream or floodplain. Exhibit A2, that's the open space and circulation map. It shows the general locations of open spaces, amenities, recreation areas, and pocket park spread throughout the community. It also shows 2.5 miles of public greenways and a mile of the 10-foot wide multi-use trail. So that's where you get to the 3.5 miles of trails. Those, coupled with the roadside sidewalks on both sides of the road, provide residents throughout the community connectivity and access to all the open space. Our current plan is to locate the central amenity kind of in the middle of the site near the existing pond, overlooking the very picturesque pond. The total open space, as Brian mentioned, will be around 120 acres. This exceeds the minimum required under UDO Section 7.5.A. The required open space would be somewhere between 53 acres and 73 acres, but that depends on the final count for single-family townhomes and multifamily. So the proposed open space is about 26% of the site. I was thinking we had the road details, but Oh, there you go. I know this is an exciting detail. And we already talked about it before. This is the minor collector, it meets town standards. I don't think we showed it, but we also have the detail for the minor thoroughfare, the 79-foot right-of-way. And it looks like now it's TIA time. Any questions for me?
Can I ask a quick
Yep.
question for clarification? Just clarify real quick, the 100-foot versus the 150-foot that Mr. Coates mentioned, just clarify that for me.
That's the driveway distance.
Is it driveway, or is it street, or is it?
Technically, it's a street distance. Yeah, street distance from the intersection. A second
street for connection. A UDO requires 150, they're asking that be reduced to 100.
Okay. I just want a clarification on that. Thank
Sorry, and we do it 100. The 100-foot is what we've done at Wendell Falls.
Okay.
So sorry, I kind of butchered the explanation of that, but
All good.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, like you'll hear people refer to it as a driveway, but it's not individual driveways, it's actual streets that would get constructed, the distance between them so on that, the minor thoroughfare, there would need to be at least 100 feet between two streets proposed.
Makes
off
perfect
of that.
sense. I was
Yep.
confused with the 100-foot driveway off a thoroughfare. I knew that was nothing like Wendell Falls.
Exactly.
Fair enough, thank you.
Now, some of the questions I got, I'm not sure when they asked, I got a list, but is that the end or what? Concerns? Should I wait till I listen to everything?
Yeah, we just,
As you go.
yeah, we ask as you go, if it pertains to
I'm
the
not sure if
section,
it's
I
the
would
right
say.
person or what, or,
Well, if you feel like this man can answer your question, why don't you give a crack at it?
or if it, I see some roads and signs, because I was like, Barry already left, but, we almost built in Wendell Falls about 3 years ago on Barry's lot that he built out there, Barry Perry, that was just here, so, we own 3 homes out there, our family, and there's just been some things, just some things to think about in this next development, which I don't know if you'll be able to do any of them, or, of course, I always ask for lot size, and I got that from y'all, but parking can be an issue. And, maybe just a little bit of a larger road, you can park on a road then, if you had 30-foot roads instead of 27-foot roads. The garage, when they pull in with the full-size truck, there's that far in front, and then there's about that far behind it, maybe you have, and if you have a full-size truck, extended cab, it's gonna be over into the sidewalk part, so if you had 23-foot driveways and add 3 foot to the garages, you could park full-size trucks in there, and, we're having that issue now, we run into the sheetrock and stuff, so they had to fix it, but, not everyone has a little car, some people have full-size vehicles and they're working and stuff. Those are the things, the problems we've had in Wendell Falls now, and in the homes we own currently. I think that is it. That's why I couldn't, we were gonna do a 3-car garage and 3 cars, but I needed parking for 9 cars, and that wouldn't work, so that's why we kinda pulled out.
Gotcha.
So, it doesn't work for everyone, but I think it
Right.
is great, and we do love the quality, and we love Wendell Falls. It's just some of the things to think about in developing this next one might take, help some people out
Yeah.
in the future.
Thank
So you don't
you.
have the same issues, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing them up.
Yeah,
I think,
thanks.
those are definite items we can,
Appreciate it.
consider.
Great, thank you, Chris. Then I would like to call Josh Frankie up to talk about traffic.
Josh Ranke, North Carolina traffic lead at Ramey Kemp and Associates, 5808 Farrington Place, Raleigh, North Carolina. Bachelor's in civil engineering from Valparaiso University. I'm over 20 years experience now, so I'm getting older, but just topped that this year. And registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina, pre-qualified to do traffic studies by NCDOT.
Great. I would then like to tender Mr. Ranke as an expert in the field of transportation engineering.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'll kind of briefly go through sort of the process of how we got here. I know there are a lot of improvements that are associated with this. If there are any questions, we can dive into that. I'll kind of give a big overview. This is something that, you know, from the get-go, scoping, which is kind of determining how big of a study area, those sort of things, we work with town staff as well as NCDOT staff to determine that. Any assumptions that we have, so we'll go out and collect the counts, which we did this year, so we didn't have those effects that COVID sometimes did in some previous years. Growth in the area, adjacent developments, not only did we say we expect it to continue to grow at what we've seen historically out there, but in addition to that, not only did we include our development's traffic, but the development of 2 adjacent sites that were about approximately 600 and some odd other homes. So we're obviously looking very holistically at this. We're looking quite a ways out in the future. We had an analysis year of 2030, so all those assumptions that go into all of that, they've been reviewed by town staff as well as NCDOT and with their guidance and help with providing information on those adjacent developments that we included. Same thing with the review. So obviously we conduct our analysis. We put together these lovely documents that are very large and probably not super fun to read. Everybody just flips to the last page that has the pictures. But DOT and town staff, they do look through those. They were very heavily involved in the review. Kind of working back and forth on some of that with the phasing. When we looked at phasing this, obviously there are a lot of improvements. They're not needed at home number 1, but they're needed at different points when we're triggering them. So when we're doing these TIAs, we're following both DOT and town guidelines of when we look at those mitigation, when we start to see the deterioration in traffic and levels of service is what we call them. So big picture, like I said, we had 9 study area intersections, some at the interchange up there off of Lizard Lick, kind of stretching all the way down to US 64 Business. We have mitigation at 6 of those intersections. I think the heaviest one, I think we have 7 different improvements at one intersection. So we're talking various turn lanes, signals, a roundabout at one of those are all things we're kind of looking at. Obviously, they're phased differently. We can dive into that if y'all would like. It is something, like I said, in terms of the recommendations, what we're looking at there, it is to mitigate this traffic. We are looking holistically. All these recommended improvements will be incorporated into the project as proposed conditions with the time frame that's laid out with the phasing. It is my professional opinion that the proposed development will not adversely impact safety of the residents from a transportation perspective, and the proposed use will not constitute a nuisance based on the vehicular movements with the proposed mitigation we've laid out. And the proposed road network will allow for the safe and efficient flow of emergency services to and from the site with all these improvements in place. And I'm happy to dive into them more. There are, like I said, there are quite a few. Obviously, the closer you are to the site, those are the intersections that are a little heavier with some of the improvements going on there. Even at the interchange, we're looking at signals, roundabouts, those sort of things. And then as we get further down, there are other turn lane and such improvements. So, do you have any questions?
Josh, do you have the map handy? All the arrows and the...
I think, I think it was at the end.
Chris was on it earlier, maybe, or...
Am I spoiling things, or was it
there we go. So I just had a couple questions, and
Sure.
I know we've had traffic discussions with you before with other projects, but tell me kind of what triggers the traffic effect all the way down towards Wendell Boulevard at 97, that intersection. I mean, it just seems so far away. I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, so that is one, what we're going to look at. So when we do these things, when we have these growth rates, we say, here's how it's growing at historic rates. To be honest, when you're looking at 600 homes plus what we looked at was 1,700 single family. So I know earlier it was said if it does tip above that in terms of number of units, what that is we looked at all single family. They tend to be higher generators than a townhouse or any sort of multifamily. So what DOT looks at is your trip generation still below this? If not, we're not going to have you updated. If it goes above and beyond, then we want to see a new one. We want to see if other things are, so just to kind of quickly address that. But it is something the DOT did acknowledge. They said there's the potential for looking at that in the future and saying, maybe things weren't quite growing at 3% a year to 2030 with the addition of 1,700 homes, plus an additional 600, that is pretty much going to be a lot of that 3% that you see each year is that development. So right now, they are requiring that improvement. There is consideration to reevaluate that in the future and see if there's still the need. It is something, it is the very long turn lane that just extends, so it does have plenty of capacity, but they were seeing in terms of delays to meet their guidelines, they said, we need to be considering an improvement there. We are open to looking at that in the future, knowing that the way we're required to do this analysis is very conservative. It says it will continue to grow at that rate, and by the way, add in all these homes, which is typically how that growth rate happens.
Can I add one thing to that real quick?
Go ahead, absolutely.
Just because you're somebody who's talking to DOT about this intersection at some point in time, you might also can recommend to them that it would maybe be a good candidate for just assessing the signalization timing that's on it. There's a
Okay.
10-second left turn in the afternoon when traffic backs up. and
Yes.
I'm not a traffic engineer, I recognize.
And that is
Seems
something.
like as the growth in traffic
And-
patterns change, seems like an interesting place to continue to assess timing.
And that is something, just so you know, and I'm jotting that down because I can talk to the district and mention it next time I talk to them.
So all these changes are just for this development, but when the other sites around it get developed, this could go up even more. I mean,
And then
they have to kick in, but the other people have to kick in to fix some of these things.
And,
How does that
and
work?
so a lot of times what they'll do is if they recommend similar improvements, they'll say, play nice work together. They might have additional improvements and say, essentially what they do is take one piece and add on to the other. So like I said, where we have two adjacent developments, neither one included us. One is actually, I think, behind us in terms of scheduling, but something with the scoping. They weren't required to include any of our development. Ours does include theirs. So like I said, it's kind of like putting pieces together and building on each other. So if another development came along, they'd say, well, when that one builds out, here's things we already know that are going to come into play, consider those, and then add your traffic in. So it would be likely that they might have additional improvements. These are pretty significant, so some of them are even going to operate at a better level of service than if we didn't come in, because it's just that tipping point where unfortunately we see a threshold that we exceed, and to put in any sort of improvement like a signal, it gets it much better than it would have been without our development coming along. So they might still be within the reasonable range of what the threshold would be for DOT, but they might have additional improvements to consider.
Thanks.
And then this being, I know being a NC highway, and obviously there's turn lanes and things like that I know that you guys are putting in. Just as far as the road widening, is that going to fall just 100% with DOT and kind of what they feel like generates, or is that, did I miss some things that you guys are having to do?
You said in terms of road winding, you mean like is it within the right of way and such?
Just
Or-
even just the Highway 97 in general.
Okay, so the extending that where you're essentially getting a full lane from Lizard Lick all the way to our driveway, is that kind of where you're saying they're widening that?
Correct.
Yeah, that sort of thing,
So
so,
that's from that intersection all the way to your.
correct.
About right there.
Ultimately, yes,
Okay.
all the way to the driveway.
But that's really the only, I mean, there's nothing going out Lizard Lick towards the bypass, or is there widening along through there too?
So there's the potential, so the only other stretch, there are two other stretches that would have widening that taper down. That is a full width there,
Okay.
which means all through those two intersections. The other one is at the ramps coming down Lizard Lick, so if you came off the ramp and were to head south on Lizard Lick, there is about 1,200 feet before it tapers back down, that it
Okay.
would essentially be a free flow lane off the ramps, and then they'd be able to continue and merge. And then same thing right now where we're looking at US 64 Business, Old Battle Bridge, NC 97, that intersection that we were saying is pretty far out there.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you add a second left turn lane, you need to have a receiving. That's another one where their minimum is about 1,200 feet that they want to see, and before it tapers down again. So there are a couple points right now that would be in consideration for that. Like I said, asterisks on that one, as they do acknowledge, and they said we can reevaluate that. But like I said, along NC 97 between Lizard Lick and then heading to our site drive on NC 97, that would be full width. And that would be something that, obviously when we look at the design, and I'm not a designer, but when we're looking at the design, it will be something they want to keep it within the existing right of way. We don't want to negatively impact anybody's land or anything like that, but they obviously want to provide this additional capacity.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, Josh, and if I could call Hunter Howell forward as next witness, go ahead. One last thing, I wanted to, before, we finish with Josh Ranke, Josh, can you come back up just for a second? This is a copy of the full,
That is mine, yes.
TIA, is that to the best of your knowledge, a true and accurate
Yes,
copy?
I even did double-sided on the appendix for you
I
to
would
slim it
go
down.
ahead and like to admit that as an exhibit, which I'll give to the clerk, and we can number them together when we're done. That sounds good, thank you. That was it. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hunter Howell. My office address is 412 East Chatham Street, Cary, North Carolina. I'm a professional real estate appraiser, and I work with Valbridge Property Advisors. I am currently licensed by the state of North Carolina as a state certified general appraiser. I'm a member of the Appraisal Institute, working towards the MAI designation, and have been appraising properties here in Wake County for approximately 8 years now. I was engaged by the applicant to examine the development's impact on the site and the surrounding area.
Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and tender Mr. Howell as an expert in the field of property appraisal and impacts of new development.
Very well.
Great, thank you.
So I prepared a report in which I analyzed the effects of the proposed residential development to determine the effects of the surrounding areas. In addition, I also reviewed the master plan, the character of the surrounding area, and how this type of development typically impacts the surrounding properties. The proposed development will be located conveniently between downtown Wendell and downtown Zebulon with easy access to US 64. This location is advantageous for a larger development to be placed here to ease traffic congestion, not only for the adjacent sites, but for the larger area as well. The surrounding land uses include a mix of vacant land, standalone single-family residential homes, and residential subdivisions scattered throughout. With the surrounding land uses being residential in nature, the Ammon's proposed master plan for residential development is compatible with the surrounding residential land uses. I also examined the current demographics, surrounding developments, and the residential housing market within what I consider the proposed development's neighborhood. From this data, I concluded that nearby proposed or under construction residential developments range from 2.52 units per acre to 5.17 units per acre. Based on this, the proposed Ammon's master plan development will, with an approximate 4 units per acre, is compatible with the surrounding developments within the general neighborhood. The housing market within the Ammon's master plan development's general neighborhood has been tight over the past several years. I researched residential sales from 2019 through 2022, and from these sales, the average sales prices have increased substantially and days on market have decreased. And both of these statistics indicate a strong residential market in need of additional inventory. In regard to how this development will impact surrounding properties, there is generally a positive impact to surrounding properties with this type of development proposed. As new residential developments come to areas, it enhances the surrounding area positively in terms of property values. Increasing home values increase the value of available vacant land as developers look to fill the void for additional housing options. This has been seen in several instances across the Triangle market. We looked at 3 large residential subdivisions with master plans in other formerly semi-rural or rural areas and found that they have sparked further development of adjacent property and increase in land values. The best and more well-known examples of this are Wendell Falls and Flowers Plantation. These areas were mostly vacant agricultural land when the development broke ground, and these areas have since seen rapid growth and positive impacts on the adjacent land, especially as commercial uses were needed to support the residential growth. Based on my experience and my analysis of the subject's neighborhood, the proposed Ammon's master plan is compatible with the surrounding land uses and will maintain or enhance the value of adjacent properties. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have for me.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Hunter, is this a copy of the report that you just read from? Okay, I'd go ahead and like to have that admitted as well as an exhibit in the record.
Okay.
All right. Uh-oh. Oh, I know. Okay, so those are the, concludes the different witnesses that we would bring before you tonight. I wanted to also add for you that there's a list of conditions that are proposed that we've agreed with the town staff on that would be applied if you're inclined to approve the special use permit. It would be subject to those three conditions. And we've agreed to those, which is a requirement under the law that we agree to any such conditions. And then from there, I would just move into the approval criteria. And I'm just going to quickly fly through these real quickly to give you an overview of where the evidence had met all of those requirements. And then we'll be ready to shut it down shortly after that, and possibly not a moment too soon. So the first requirement being that the proposed use does not adversely affect the general plans for the physical development of the town as embodied in the ordinance and in any plan or portion thereof adopted by the board. With respect to this factor and also factor B, you heard Mr. Seamster testify, as did the planning director, that the proposed use and density are permitted in the site zoning district and are supported by the town's comprehensive plan. So jumping down to factor C, the proposed use will not adversely affect the health and safety of residents and workers in the town. With respect to that factor, Mr. Howell testified that the proposed use is appropriately located, adjacent to residential uses, and is appropriately buffered. And in addition, Mr. Renke testified and explained that the transportation improvements are appropriately designed to handle the additional traffic and will provide efficient access for emergency services. And so that factor is met. Factor D, proposed use will not be detrimental to the use of development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. And with respect to that factor and the next one, factor E, you heard Mr. Howell testify that the proposed use is compatible with surrounding uses and will not be detrimental to adjacent properties, nor will it be affected by surrounding uses because it provides sufficient buffers. With regard to factor F, the proposed use will be placed on a lot of sufficient size to satisfy the space requirements of the use. With regard to that factor, Mr. Seamster testified that the site plan would comply with the UDO and as modified by the PUD document, including density, open space, and other applicable requirements. Getting there through factor G, the proposed use will not constitute a nuisance or hazard, etc. With respect to that factor, Mr. Seamster and Mr. Howell explained that the site plan provides sufficient buffers and transitions to adjacent properties to adequately protect. And then Mr. Renke testified that the transportation improvements are sufficiently designed to handle the amount of traffic anticipated from this development. Factor H, that the standards set forth for each particular use for which a permit may be granted have been met. And with respect to, we can hit three of these all at one time, H, J, and K. Mr. Seamster testified that the plan conforms to all of the applicable UDO requirements as modified by the PUD plan document, which is allowed in a PUD district. And that has been verified by planning staff through the review process. So that gets us through subpoint K. So I think the evidence in the record so far, assuming there's no other evidence to go in the record, is solely competent material and substantial evidence that proves the required findings. And with that, we would request that and would state that the application meets the SUP requirements of section 1515.15b of the UDO, and that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And we would request that the board, if it sees fit, approve the requested special use permit with the agreed upon conditions. Unless there are other questions, that would conclude our evidentiary portion of the hearing.
Are there any other questions? Is there anybody else who's been sworn in that would like to speak? All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Board, what is your wish?
I do have a, quick question, and I'm happy to make the motion, when necessary. Ms. Coates, do we need to, I know you mentioned adding, the adjustment of 3.5 miles. Is that something we need to?
So I think I just want clarification. So the PUD document currently says 2.5 miles of greenway. And the additional mile is not greenway, it is multi-use path. So I think keeping the PUD to say 2.5 miles of greenway is correct.
So we're good without
Yep.
that adjustment. Commissioner Lutz, I'm ready with a motion if you are, sir.
All right, go ahead.
I will make a motion to approve a special use permit request by BCUS Acquisitions to create a residential PUD on 458 approximate acres located at 2309 NC 97 Highway, 1412 Marshman Road, 1832 Peach Grove Lane, 2103 Peach Grove Lane, and 2040 Peach Grove Lane, subject to the proposed conditions.
Yes.
Nice work. Okay, motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay.
I have a quick request on the next item.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I'd like to make a motion that we move ahead to item 6D, and mainly just, I'll say that we've got, one of the Triangle's most interesting and compelling up-and-coming young artists here with us tonight, and he has patiently waited a little over 3 hours now, and he's supposed to be in Charleston tomorrow, so, I'd love to be able to let him get back to school tonight, if you don't mind us letting him go next.
Any problems with the board?
That's not too much trouble for staff.
I see no reason why not to. All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll come back to that, and we'll go ahead and jump forward to item 6D, which is approve a new public art sculpture and authorize it to be located at the new town hall site.
Yep, good evening, Commissioners. Just a plug for the Planning Department. I think tonight's agenda shows you the full depth of what we work on day in and day out. Typically, you see us a lot for development, but we're also working on sidewalks, public art, and other projects. And so I just want to take keynote. I would like to thank my staff for helping me put all these agenda items together, because it is a lot for each item. So this item before you, 6D, is to approve a new public art sculpture and authorize it to be located at the new town hall site. Town Hall's been approached by artist Mr. Bowen Beatty, who is here tonight, to create a sculpture made of metal to be located at the new town hall site on Landing View Drive. Mr. Beatty is an Enloe High graduate and current student at American College of Building Arts in Charleston, South Carolina. Mr. Beatty has presented various times to the Appearance Commission, and the item before you tonight is recommended approval by the Appearance Commission. The sculpture design was created by Mr. Beatty with a focus from the historical use of a push plow that was used in row crops. The sculpture will be made of sheets of steel and will naturally rust on site. The sculpture will contain a tip made of a polished steel and be roughly close to 8 and 8.5 feet in height. I believe his slides were included in your packet. The artist is donating time and labor for the sculpture creation, is requesting up to $5,000 for materials. The town of Wendell has that in our budget for the Appearance Commission. The town is also going to be constructing the concrete pad for the base of the sculpture, as well as plantings around the concrete pad. Funding for the materials, concrete pad, and plantings is in the Appearance Commission fiscal year 23 budget. The artist is hoping to begin creating the sculpture this fall and winter. It's expected that the sculpture will be in place spring of 2023. And as I mentioned, the Appearance Commission did recommend approval with a few little caveats. We worked through this at their October 3rd meeting. Some of the reasoning is we want to create so that the sculpture is not vandalized or used as playground equipment, is to create the crop feel around it, to create separation so the public can view it but not use it as a jungle gym. Concrete pad for mounting. Also, when the art rusts, there could be the rusting of the concrete pad, so the plantings actually serve as a buffer and can prohibit people from seeing that rusting that occurs. We are asking that it not have a bench. There was a caveat early on with a potential bench, but we think that would just cause more potential issues with people interacting with with the sculpture inappropriately. We want the sculpture to rust naturally in place, and then we're going to have where the sidewalk and the concrete pad are not connected, just keep separation. So, as I mentioned, Mr. Beatty is here and can answer any questions. I'd like to give him a few moments to explain his artistic venture into this. We are thrilled for a potential sculpture. We don't have any public art like this in town, and so I'll turn it over to Mr. Beatty.
All right. Thank you guys for moving me up. I have a long drive ahead of me tonight, so I appreciate getting moved up a little bit. But do you guys have pictures of the art in front of you?
Yes, we do.
You do? Okay, perfect. So, like we said, that piece is going to rust naturally, but it won't rust to the point of degradation because I'm going to be using a special kind of steel that will give a surface layer rust, but then not rust all the way through the piece. So it's more of a patina, if you know what I mean? Just the surface layer. And yeah. So, any questions?
I just really quickly, I want to acknowledge the fact that you've been here and to try to make this a little bit more of a highlight of sort of the opportunity I think that this project provides for the town. And I'm looking forward to maybe sharing a few of these pictures, if you're okay with it, after this meeting, because I know not everybody's getting to see stuff up on the screen that we're looking at.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited. As staff has already said, this is a piece of public art or a type of public art that we don't have in town. But beyond just having a piece of art that we don't have or filling that niche, I think it's really exciting to be able to be working with you.
Thank you.
Bowen is like I said, or I think staff said, a graduate at Enloe, currently a student at I can never get the name right, College of...
Yeah, ACBA.
Okay. American College of Building
Yep.
Arts.
Yep.
But also has studied in Europe this summer, has been getting some really interesting international, honestly, attention, and your work is awesome. I think it's really exciting to think that we have this opportunity as a town to support a young artist from our community, and I hope that this is not the last thing that you'll be doing in Wendell. We got lots of opportunities for more of this kind of stuff, and our history is a huge component, and the thought that's gone into the design. Really appreciate all of it. First time I talked to Bowen, he had clearly done a lot of research on the history of our town and knew what he was talking about. So we may end up with an artist in residence sometime in the future. I look forward to additional opportunities and seeing this one come to fruition too. But just thanks for your time.
No, thank you.
Any other questions from the board at all? I agree. It's cool. It's going to be kind of fun to see that out in front of this new town hall, new cool sculpture, and yes, I'm excited. This is neat. Thank you for doing this with us.
Yep.
If you'd like a motion, I'd be
Go ahead.
happy to move that we approve the new public art sculpture and authorize it to be located at the new town hall.
All right, motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Safe travels, sir.
Travel safely.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go back to item 6A. Resolution affirming the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners support regarding implementation of a compliant MPDES MS4 stormwater program. Sorry to build some suspense for you there, Mr. Bray, but
That's okay. We're going to try to wrap this up in under an hour, hopefully. So, just a few minutes.
like a good sermon there, right?
Good evening to the Board of Commissioners. We're here before you tonight regarding a resolution that came after our recent stormwater audit of our MPDs, the National Pollution Discharge and Elimination System stormwater permit. This is one of the very few times where I'm pretty excited about coming in, and even though we're non-compliant, we got the notice of violation, we're non-compliant, but we are so far, away from where we were just a few years ago, when it was just a very fledgling, program. So, and we also have many areas that were in compliance that we were able to, knock out in a few short years, which that's very good years. So with your support, we initiated a gap analysis previously for the program. We hired a stormwater manager, and then we made lasting inroads with our regulating authority, NCDENR, North Carolina Department of Environmental and Natural Resources. So just a few points on that. The resolution identifies areas that need to be addressed by the stormwater program during the next term of our permit. The resolution is required by the state as part of the process acknowledging deficiencies identified during the recent program audit. The state is auditing all municipal permit holders and providing direction to improve programs and make corrections required for compliance with federal code. So, NCDNR identifies precisely where we are non-compliant, and we have received that. Staff will prepare and provide regular reports to the board as we continue gaining areas of compliance during the term of the new permit, which is a 5-year permit term. Our stormwater manager, Superintendent Joseph Collins, who we hired, he's with us here tonight. He will present a snapshot of the audit results in just a few moments. His diligence, it really allowed all areas of noncompliance to be known. We didn't have any real surprises. And all areas that are identified are ones that are within our ability to reach compliance within the next term of our permit with your continued support. So I definitely want to thank the board for that. And Joe will now give us his briefing of the audit results. After the presentation, we'll be asking that the board adopt the resolution and instruct the mayor, town manager, and stormwater program manager to sign the attached resolution. Joe?
Good evening, Board of Commissioners. Hopefully I don't mess things up here. Oh, arrows, right? Okay. We'll start with the overview of the notice of violation, or an NOV. On June 29th, 2022, we had an audit from NCDNR. They came to us and looked at all of our stuff that we had, and September 30th, 2022, we were issued a notice of violation. That notice number is NOV 2022-PC-0361. We have since submitted the 30-day required written response acknowledging the town's intent to comply with the NOV requirements. The NOV requires the Wendell to adopt a board resolution declaring support for a compliant stormwater program. We are working to complete the 120-day requirements, which are an operations and maintenance plan for our facilities, and a self-evaluation of permit sections not audited by NCDEQ. And these items are a part of what is to be completed for the issuance of a new stormwater permit. So with the board resolution summary, the resolution states that the town is acknowledging that the permit is required by the Federal Clean Water Act, and that MS4 permits are issued by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. The town of Wendell was issued its second NPDES permit for the MS4 on January 23rd, 2018, and that is the one we currently received an NOV for. We're acknowledging that as well. We acknowledge the requirements to obtain a new NPDES permit for the 2023 to 2028 permit term. We're acknowledging the requirements to conduct the self-audit as described in the NOV. We're acknowledging that the NOV requires to adopt a resolution to implement a compliant and enforceable stormwater program as defined by the NPDES permit and the new stormwater management plan, the approved stormwater management plan, and this resolution must be submitted no later than November 29th, 2022. We also are acknowledging the requirement to provide adequate funding and staffing to implement the stormwater management program that complies with the NPDES permit and with the stormwater management plan. We are also acknowledging that the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality enforcement action and penalties could result from noncompliance with the requirements in the NOV. We're acknowledging the NCDEQ enforcement action and penalties may not prevent the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency from taking its own enforcement action for noncompliance with the NPDES MS4 permit. And at the end, the Board of Commissioners, with this resolution, affirms its support to develop for the development and implementation of a compliant NPDES MS4 program. As previously stated by Brian, we're asking the board to adopt the resolution and instruct the mayor, town manager, and the stormwater manager to sign it.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions from the board? All right.
I have a motion when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Make a motion that we adopt a resolution and instruct the mayor, town manager, and stormwater program manager to sign the attached resolution supporting and adopting compliant NPDES MS4 stormwater program.
All right. Motion, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. It passes. Item 6B, authorizing the town manager to sign a temporary grading and construction easement agreement with Dan Ryan Builders Group, North Carolina, LLC, on town-owned property located at 3,000 Wendell Boulevard. Mr. Coates.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioners. I'll make these last few items hopefully quickly. We're asking for a motion to approve and authorize the town manager to sign a temporary grading and construction easement to DRB Dan Ryan Builders on town-owned property located at 3,000 Wendell Boulevard. That's the property we've purchased for a future police station. We don't need it to be, we're not going to be building the police station in the next couple years, so they're asking for just a temporary construction easement to build the entrance road that will actually have access to our future police station, but also their townhome development that was approved. They will have to restore the property. It is a temporary easement of 0.26 acres. It's for a 12-month period. There's no conflict with any of our town timelines for the future police station. They do have to seed, resow, and restore the area that they disturb as part of the easement language. It has been reviewed by the town attorney, and we'll be using that future road for access to the police station when it's constructed. I can field any questions that you have on that.
Got a motion when you're ready?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I move that we authorize the town manager to sign temporary grading and construction easement agreement with DRB on the town-owned property located at 3,000 Wendell Boulevard with the PIN number referenced in item 6B.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes.
My last item tonight is probably the one that's the most fun. Item 6C is the award the Town of Wendell Neighborhood Improvement Project to H&H Enterprises of Knightdale for roughly $995,000 worth of sidewalk and road improvements west of downtown on Cook, Academy, and Todd Streets. It's to authorize the town manager to sign the contract. The town of Wendell was awarded $255,000 in CDBG funds from Wake County in late 2020 to assist with neighborhood improvement project. The CDBG funding was coupled with town funds to provide infrastructure improvements along Cook, Todd, Wall, and Academy Streets west of downtown. The improvements include new sidewalks where they do not exist, ADA improvements, new curb and gutter, and resurfacing along parts of West Academy. Town of Wendell contracted with Withers Ravenel for project management and design services. Over the last year, Withers has designed the infrastructure and obtained the permanent sidewalk easements from the properties. The project went out to bid in July of 2020. We had 2 firms respond. When you're using the CDBG funding, we needed 3, so we had to put the project back out to bid. Same 2 companies bid. When you put it out a second time, you don't need a third bid. The lowest bidder was H&H Enterprises of Knightdale. At $1 million. Withers did negotiate a $5,000 reduction. Once the contract is awarded, pre-construction meeting will be conducted and the project can begin. We're hoping concrete work and sidewalk work can begin quicker than the road, the redoing of West Academy to get construction out there. And then for your reference, Withers Ravenel will be providing construction observation services on behalf of the town. Also, given the increases in construction and petroleum product, the budget, we are over budget by roughly around $100,000. That will come back to you as a budget amendment to provide revenue from the general fund for the balance of this project. I can field any questions that you have.
Any questions from the board?
Ready?
Yep.
Move that we award the Town of Wendell Neighborhood Improvement Project to H&H Enterprises of Knightdale for $995,000 and authorize the town manager to sign the contract.
We have a motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Just to say that this is really, really important, and I know you said it's the most fun thing, but building sidewalks, fixing our streets, I mean, this is what we hear people say they want, and we're doing it. And I think that there's a lot more places that we can do this, but I'm so glad. I know that a lot of steps have gone into getting us to this point, and I look forward to the next versions of this being faster. But I'm really excited that this is happening. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes. All right. Moving to item 7, other business, update on board committees by town board members. Commissioner Deloach, looks like you've got both of them tonight, if you want to just handle them both. And if you want to just roll that into commissioner comments, we'll start on that end tonight.
Man, I feel like Joyner tonight.
All right. When I hold the power, I'm going to flip it up on you here.
Okay, so, Eastern Wake Senior Center, just, I won't say standard, look, they're great meetings, discuss programs, services, that kind of thing. Obviously, at that time, conversation was about, Harvest Festival, Wendell Wonderland, the senior strutters were in full force at the Harvest Festival as well. And then, just recap on Scam Jam, talking about Christmas dinner, that kind of thing. So, I'll always sing the praises of the folks at the Senior Center, and I'm excited about the next meeting where I can sort of report some of the information about the presentation tonight on transportation. TJ Cog, we are actually meeting this coming Wednesday, so I will save you the gory details. We'll lump it all in together, and then I will roll into commissioner comments. We've talked about it a couple times tonight. Harvest Festival, obviously, for a period of a few hours, I think it is a sort of a glimpse into our community and what it can be and what it is. For a few short hours on that Saturday, everybody was in unison, regardless of where you were from, what your background may have been, thoughts, beliefs, etc. It was great to see. I spent majority of the day on stage. It was a well-publicized event. The weather couldn't have been any more picture perfect. So the chamber dialed that up for sure. So I appreciate them allowing me to be a part of it. But, I think Roger said it best earlier, just the town's participation, it does not happen without Public Works, without town staff. So thank you, everyone, for that. Elections this past Tuesday, I was excited to see just the excitement of our newly elected county commissioners, as well as our newly elected sheriff. I think it is important as a town in eastern Wake County that we have great rapport and relationships with these folks. So I am excited, just in my brief dealings and conversations, the future with our, just working together. You hear, since I'm doing the commissioner joiner thing, working together works, and I'm excited about that with our county commissioners and our sheriff. I'm gonna stop there. It's late. So I want to commend you, sir. You did great tonight, and appreciate the effort on short notice, and was excited. So
You can keep going if you're going. Keep that train going. Thank you.
Great job.
Because I do have a day job, no comment tonight.
I'll just say, it's such an exciting time to be in Wendell. Obviously, a 4-hour almost meeting is maybe a little bit of evidence of that, but that doesn't begin to show you the hours and hours and hours of work that staff and all of us and the people, the community stakeholders who are here tonight put in to get to this point. This is such a little snippet. I hope folks understand that there's so much thought and effort that's going into the exciting changes that are happening in our town, and I'm just glad to get to be here to be part of it.
I'll just close with a few things. I just want to say congratulations to the Launch Wendell graduates. For anyone who's kind of started a business or kind of made that leap of faith, it's nervous and exciting, and to be able to do that in a town that and have that support is, I think, is very important. And so congratulations to those people who took that leap and that brave step and to stay after it. And so best luck to them going forward in the future. And again, if anybody's looking to be a mentor, please visit the site at launchwendell.com. Wendell has upgraded its domain from .com to nc.gov, beginning with our email addresses. So if you've communicated with us in the past, just make sure that you check our new email addresses so they get to the right place. Window Wonderland is back. That's coming up Friday, December 2nd. That's another one of those great nights in town. I mean, the 4th of July, the Harvest Festival, and then this night, 5 to 9, downtown Window. We'll have the Lake Myra show, which will start here in a week or so. We'll have trolley rides, a holiday market, dance, chorus performances, cookie walk at the Methodist Church, tree lighting ceremony, food trucks, and a visit from the big man. So be there. It'll be a great night for everybody. If you can, we encourage you to bring new, unwrapped toys for children in need up to the age of 12. And we'll have some donation sites there throughout the event. Last year we had 850 toys in a night, so let's see if we can top that. Let's do it. I'll take off of that a little bit. Just being the holiday season, with it being Thanksgiving and being Christmas, there are many people who are right next to us who have a tough time during the holidays. So always look out for your neighbor, look out for people you come across. Some people need help, some people need just a shoulder, and people need just some assistance. And so there's resources in the area. I just encourage, as we get wrapped up in our own stuff and our schedules, to be sure to look out for our neighbor during the holiday season. And lastly, we have our Town of Window Homes and Businesses, the Decoration Contest. So this is a fun time. All entries must be submitted by Wednesday, December 7th. And if you have questions, just visit the website, townofwindow.com/Christmas contest. And that's all I have. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
So moved.